The Garden of Light. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more inspiring stories on storietional. Once, in a quiet village nestled between towering green hills, there lived a young girl named Lily. The village was known far and wide for its breathtaking gardens, each one more beautiful than the last, filled with vibrant flowers and plants that seemed to come alive with color. The villagers took great pride in their gardens, and each spring, the streets would burst into a kaleidoscope of reds, pinks, purples, and blues. But there was one garden, hidden away at the edge of the village, that was unlike any other. It was called the Garden of Light. No one knew exactly who tended to it, and no one had ever entered, not out of fear, but because the villagers believed it was a sacred place. They would speak of it in hushed tones, describing how the flowers there seemed to glow with a soft, ethereal light, casting a warm, welcoming glow over the entire space. There was something magical about it, something that couldn't be touched, only admired from a distance. Lily had heard stories about the garden ever since she was a little girl. She would sit with the other children by the fire, listening to the elders speak of its beauty. The older women would describe the flowers that bloomed there, their petals glowing like stars in the dark, their fragrance so sweet that it could lift your spirit just by breathing it in. The villagers believed the garden held some kind of ancient magic, a magic that could heal broken hearts and bring peace to troubled souls. Despite the wonders surrounding the garden, no one dared to enter. It was said that only the purest hearts could find their way inside. For years, Lily had wondered what lay beyond the ivy-covered gate, hidden from view. She often found herself standing at the entrance, peeking through the gaps in the vines, her curiosity getting the better of her. But something always stopped her. Perhaps it was the stories she had heard about the garden being a place of mystery, a place that should never be disturbed. But one day, something inside Lily shifted. She had grown older, and as the seasons passed, she felt a growing desire to see the garden with her own eyes. She was tired of wondering, tired of letting her curiosity be held captive by fear. She needed to experience the magic for herself. One warm spring morning, Lily stood at the edge of the village, looking up at the garden's entrance. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft, golden light over the hills. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of pine and wildflowers. With a deep breath, she walked towards the gate, her heart racing with excitement. As she approached, the gate, which had always seemed so imposing, now looked inviting. The iron gate, covered in thick vines, creaked softly as Lily gently pushed it open. The moment Lily stepped inside, she was overwhelmed by a sense of peace. It was as though she had entered a different world entirely, a world where time stood still and all her worries seemed to fade away. The garden was like something from a dream. The air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine, lavender, and roses. The colors of the flowers were so vivid that they seemed to glow in the morning light, each petal shimmering as if it were made of soft, golden light. Lily slowly walked deeper into the garden, her feet making no sound as she stepped over the soft, moss-covered ground. She could hear the faint rustle of leaves in the trees above her and the distant hum of bees gathering nectar from the flowers. Every inch of the garden was alive with energy, as though the plants themselves were breathing. The flowers seemed to lean towards her, reaching out with their delicate petals, as if welcoming her into their world. She stopped in front of a cluster of wildflowers, bluebells, daisies, and violets, whose colors seemed to shift and change in the sunlight. The flowers sparkled with an otherworldly glow, and as she touched the petals, she felt a warm, soothing energy flow through her fingertips. It was as though the garden was speaking to her, telling her that she was meant to be here, that this place had been waiting for her all along. With every step she took, the garden seemed to come alive even more. The path wound its way through towering trees with silver leaves, their branches heavy with the weight of centuries. The trees stretched high into the sky, their trunks gnarled and twisted with age, but they were strong and full of life. The sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the ground and creating a dance of light and dark. As Lily wandered deeper, she reached a clearing at the center of the garden. There, standing in the middle of the open space, was a massive tree unlike any she had ever seen before. Its bark was smooth and silver, and its leaves shimmered like polished glass in the sunlight. The tree radiated a soft, calming energy, as if it were the heart of the garden itself. Beneath the tree was a stone bench, weathered with age but still sturdy. Lily sat down, feeling a deep sense of calm wash over her. She closed her eyes and breathed in the fresh, fragrant air, letting the peace of the garden fill her soul. The wind whispered softly through the leaves, and the birds sang sweet melodies from the branches above. For what felt like hours, Lily sat there in silence, letting the magic of the garden surround her. It was as though the garden was communicating with her, showing her that everything she needed, peace, strength, and clarity, was already within her. She felt a connection to the earth beneath her feet, to the trees that towered above her, and to the flowers that bloomed around her. She realized that the garden was not just a place of beauty. It was a reflection of herself, of the light and love that existed inside her, waiting to be unlocked as she sat in the tranquil garden. A soft voice echoed in her mind, calm and soothing. "This garden is a place of hope," it said. "Whenever you feel lost or uncertain, come here, and you will find peace. The light you see in these flowers is the light inside you, waiting to shine." Lily opened her eyes and looked around. The garden was more vibrant than ever, the colors of the flowers more intense, the light more brilliant. She felt a deep sense of gratitude fill her heart, as though she had been given a gift she could never repay. She knew that she would carry the garden's magic with her wherever she went, and whenever she needed it, she could return to find peace. As Lily stood up to leave, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path back to the village seemed brighter now, as though the world itself had become infused with the same light she had found in the garden. She walked with a newfound confidence, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would always have the Garden of Light to return to, a place of hope, renewal, and peace. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Storietional for more uplifting tales. The suitcase. The man stood at the edge of the platform, leaning heavily on his suitcase. It was an unusually large, worn leather case with brass clasps that gleamed faintly under the dim lights of the train station. The surface of the leather was cracked, each line telling a silent story of its many journeys. His shoulders drooped with exhaustion, his face pale and lined like a map of a hard life. The suitcase wasn't just heavy in his hands. It seemed to pull on his very soul, anchoring him to a moment he couldn't escape. Around him, the station buzzed with subdued energy, passengers coming and going, the occasional announcement crackling over the speakers, and the distant rumble of an approaching train. The air was thick with the scent of damp concrete and faint traces of oil, a mix that seemed to cling to everything. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more engaging stories like this one. Your support helps us bring more content to you. For weeks, this suitcase had been his constant companion. It followed him everywhere, its worn handle cutting into his palm, and its weight a relentless reminder of what he carried inside. It wasn't merely a piece of luggage. It was a time capsule, a Pandora's box of memories he both yearned to revisit and feared to open. It held his past, his regrets, and a love that had slipped through his fingers like sand. Whenever he paused to rest, the suitcase stood by him, unyielding and silent, as if daring him to confront its secrets. The night air was cool, carrying with it a faint metallic tang from the tracks. He shivered, though not entirely, from the chill. Pulling his coat tighter around his thin frame, he adjusted the suitcase and took a deep breath. Above him, the sky was a canvas of gray, streaked with the faint glow of city lights. The speakers announced the train's arrival with a burst of static, and he turned to face the approaching headlights cutting through the mist. His heart raced, a drumbeat of hesitation and anticipation as he waited. Memories surged forward, vivid and unrelenting. Her face appeared in his mind, framed by her dark, wind-tousled hair and illuminated by her gentle, knowing smile. He remembered the day she had handed him the suitcase. It had been raining, the kind of relentless downpour that muffled the world and made everything seem smaller. She had stood before him, her fingers trembling as she gripped the handle. "Keep it for me," she had said, her voice soft but steady, her eyes glistening with something she wouldn't let fall. Then, without another word, she had disappeared into the curtain of rain. He had called out, his voice breaking against the storm, but she hadn't turned back. The train screeched to a halt, its brakes releasing a high-pitched wail that echoed across the platform. The door slid open, and he stepped inside, dragging the suitcase behind him. The interior of the train was dimly lit, the seats covered in fabric that smelled faintly of mildew and regret. He found an empty corner and settled in, placing the suitcase at his feet. The train lurched forward, and the city lights outside blurred into streaks of gold and white, a moving canvas of fleeting moments. His thoughts drifted to the day they had met. It was a bright afternoon in a cozy bookstore, the kind where the scent of paper and ink wrapped around you like a warm embrace. They had both reached for the same book, a worn volume of poetry with frayed edges. Their hands had brushed, and she had laughed, a soft, lilting sound that stayed with him even now. That day, they had talked for hours, their words flowing like a stream, effortless and clear. She spoke of dreams and distant places, her eyes alight with wonder. But life, as it often does, had dulled that brightness over time. Their conversations grew shorter, their silences longer, until one day, she was gone, leaving him with nothing but this suitcase and an ache that refused to fade. The train rocked gently, a rhythmic motion that did little to soothe him. He stared at the suitcase, his fingers brushing against its worn surface. For weeks, he had carried it without daring to open it, the fear of what lay inside keeping him paralyzed. But now, the weight of not knowing was unbearable. With trembling hands, he unlatched the brass clasps. The sound of the locks clicking open echoed in his ears like a gunshot. Inside, the contents were meticulously arranged, as if she had packed not just with care, but with purpose. A neatly folded scarf lay on top, its fabric soft and faintly scented with lavender. Beneath it was a leather-bound notebook, its edges worn, the cover embossed with faint floral patterns. His hands shook as he opened it, revealing pages filled with her handwriting, delicate, flowing letters that danced across the paper. There were sketches, fragments of poetry, and notes written in the margins, as if she had poured her soul onto each page. Remember, if this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It means so much and helps us create more meaningful content. At the bottom of the suitcase lay a small box tied with a ribbon. He hesitated, his breath catching in his throat, before untying the ribbon and lifting the lid. Inside was a photograph of the two of them, taken on a sunlit day in the park. They were laughing, their faces close together, radiating a joy that felt almost foreign now. Beneath the photograph was a letter, its paper soft and slightly yellowed with age. He unfolded it carefully, his eyes scanning the words that seemed to leap off the page. "If you're reading this," it began, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for leaving without an explanation, for burdening you with this suitcase and my memories. I had my reasons, though I'm not sure they were good enough. Please know that I cared for you deeply, more than I could ever express. This suitcase holds pieces of me, but it's not meant to weigh you down. When you're ready, let it go." The train slowed as it approached the next station. The man sat motionless, the letter trembling in his hands. A tear traced a path down his cheek, but his heart felt lighter. He closed the suitcase gently, stood up, and carried it to the door. When he stepped off the train, he left the suitcase behind on the seat, a relic of a past he was finally ready to let go of. The platform was quiet, the air crisp and clean. Above him, the sky was a vast expanse of stars, each one a tiny beacon of hope. For the first time in weeks, he walked without the weight of the suitcase pulling him down. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was his. And that was enough. Thank you for staying with us through this story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories. See you in the next one. Before we step into the chilling unknown, don't forget to subscribe to Storietional on YouTube, where every story pulls you deeper into the dark. Now, let the tale begin. Title: The House That Never Sleeps. They say some houses are alive. Not with people, but with something older, darker and hungrier. Blackwood Manor was one such place. It sat on the outskirts of Ravenshade, its broken windows staring out like dead eyes. No birds sang near its roof, no flowers grew in its garden. For decades, the house had been left alone, its gates rusting and its halls silent. But silence is never truly empty. When Evelyn Hart received a letter stating she had inherited the manor from an uncle she'd never met, she was more curious than afraid. "It's just a house," she told herself as she packed her bags. The day Evelyn arrived, the sky was overcast, bruised with storm clouds. The caretaker, Mr. Caldwell, met her at the gate. He was thin, wiry, with eyes that never stopped darting toward the upper windows. "Miss Hart," he said, clutching a brass key in his bony hand, "there are rules you must follow. Do not stay on the third floor after midnight. And whatever happens, do not open the door at the end of the hallway." Evelyn smirked. "Are these the house rules or just campfire stories, Mr. Caldwell?" But Mr. Caldwell didn't smile. Inside, the manor was frozen in time. Dust coated every surface, but the grand furniture, the towering bookshelves, and the heavy velvet curtains all spoke of a past splendor. That night, Evelyn wandered the halls with a lantern in hand. The floor creaked under her steps, and faint drafts whispered through cracks in the walls that in the parlor. She found portraits of the Hart family, stern faces staring down at her. One painting caught her eye, a young boy, his face pale, his eyes hollow. At the bottom of the painting, a plaque read, "Edgar Hart, lost but never gone." As the clock struck midnight, Evelyn heard it. Faint tapping coming from somewhere above. Tap, tap, tap. She followed the sound, her lantern casting long shadows along the wallpapered halls. The tapping led her to the third floor. Mr. Caldwell's warning echoed in her mind, but curiosity was stronger. At the end of the hallway stood a door slightly ajar, with faint light spilling through the crack. "Hello?" Evelyn called softly. The tapping stopped. Slowly, she pushed the door open. Inside was a study, perfectly preserved. Books lined the walls, and an ornate desk sat by a large window. On the desk lay an old journal, its leather cracked and pages yellowed. She flipped it open. "The house is watching. It knows when we're awake. We mustn't listen to the whispers." Suddenly, a chill ran down her spine. The hair on her neck stood on end as she felt watched. If you're still here, brave listener, don't forget to subscribe to Storietional for more stories that linger long after the final word. Now let's continue. The door slammed shut behind her. Evelyn spun around, her lantern flickering. From the shadows of the room, a shape began to emerge. A boy, pale, thin, his hollow eyes fixed on her. It was the boy from the painting. "You shouldn't be here," he said in a cracked voice. Evelyn stumbled back. Who are you?" But the boy didn't answer. He simply pointed toward the window. Outside, Evelyn saw figures, shapes moving in the darkness of the garden. They were watching her. She grabbed the journal and bolted from the room. The hallway was darker now. The walls seemed to twist and narrow. The shadows moved unnaturally, stretching toward her like grasping fingers. She heard whispers, soft and persistent. "Evelyn, Evelyn, stay with us." She ran down the stairs, but the grand staircase seemed endless, looping back on itself. When she finally reached the foyer, the front door was gone. In its place stood another hallway, one she didn't recognize. "Let me out," she screamed, but the house did not listen. Somewhere deep within its walls, the house sighed. The journal in her hands was warm, pulsing like a heartbeat. She opened it again, and the words had changed. "The house has chosen you. You are part of it now." Mr. Caldwell found the journal 2 days later, left on the front steps of the manor. Evelyn was never found. But the house, it still whispers. And those who dare to stand close enough to Blackwood Manor on a silent night might hear her voice. Please don't listen to the whisper. Thank you for joining us on this haunting journey. Don't forget to subscribe to Storietional for more spine-chilling tales. Until next time, stay in the light. Welcome to Storietional, where stories come alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you enjoy this tale. Deep in the heart of a vast and ancient forest, a young woodcutter named Elias lived with his grandmother in a quaint wooden cottage. Their home, nestled on the forest's edge, was surrounded by towering pines and the distant sounds of rustling leaves. The forest was no ordinary woodland. It was said to be enchanted, its trees whispering secrets to the wind, and its streams singing melodies under the moonlight. Villagers believed the forest held both wonders and perils, and for generations, they avoided venturing too deep. Elias, however, was unlike the others. He was fearless and curious, often wandering further than anyone dared. Each morning, he ventured into the woods to cut timber, returning with enough to sustain their modest life. But his heart longed to uncover the mysteries hidden in the forest's depths. One fateful morning, while following the soft trill of an unseen bird, Elias stumbled upon a peculiar path he had never seen before. The trail was flanked by wildflowers in hues of violet, gold, and crimson, their fragrance filling the air. At its end stood an old, moss-covered gate. The iron bars were intricately twisted, forming patterns of animals, leaves, and vines that seemed almost alive, shimmering faintly in the dappled sunlight. Elias hesitated, but then pushed the gate open with a creak. Beyond lay a hidden grove, so breathtaking it stole his breath. A majestic oak tree towered at the grove's center, its golden leaves sparkling as if kissed by sunlight. Its gnarled roots formed natural seats around a crystal-clear spring that bubbled gently, the water's surface catching and reflecting the golden light. Surrounding the tree were flowers and shades Elias couldn't name, their petals shimmering like gemstones. The air was filled with an otherworldly hum, as if the grove itself was alive and welcoming him. As Elias stepped closer, a voice echoed, "Who dares disturb my sanctuary?" Startled, he froze, his axe slipping from his grasp. A figure emerged from the oak tree, a woman cloaked in flowing green robes, her hair cascading like vines, her eyes glowing with an ethereal emerald light. She was both terrifying and beautiful, embodying the forest itself. "I am Lysandra, guardian of the enchanted forest," she declared, her voice resonating like a song carried on the wind. "Few mortals dare to cross the gate. What brings you here?" Elias, though shaken, gathered his courage. "I mean no harm. I am a woodcutter seeking to understand the wonders of this forest." Lysandra studied him for a long moment, her piercing gaze seeming to peer into his very soul. Then, her stern expression softened into a faint smile. "Your heart is pure, Elias. Many come seeking power, but you come with curiosity. Still, with knowledge comes responsibility. If you vow to protect this forest and its magic, I will grant you 3 gifts. Remember to take a moment and subscribe to Storietional for more enchanting tales like this one." Elias knelt before her. "I vow to honor and protect this sacred place." Satisfied, Lysandra extended her hands, and 3 objects materialized. A golden leaf rested on her palm, glowing faintly. A vial of spring water sparkled in the light, and a silver whistle dangled from a delicate chain. "The leaf grants wisdom to see beyond appearances," Lysandra explained. "The water heals wounds, no matter how grave. The whistle calls upon the creatures of the forest in times of need. Use them wisely." Elias accepted the gifts with reverence. When he looked up again, Lysandra and the grove had vanished. He was standing at the gate, the forest around him quiet yet vibrant. As he returned to the village, the weight of his promise filled him with purpose. Over the years, Elias became the forest protector. He taught the villagers to live in harmony with nature, ensuring the magical woods remained untouched by greed. When famine struck, Elias used the golden leaf to find hidden resources. When illness spread, the vial's water healed the sick. And when wild animals threatened the village, the whistle brought allies from the forest to restore balance. As Elias grew older, he continued to visit the forest. Each time, it felt as though the trees whispered their gratitude, their leaves brushing against him gently as he passed. He would sit by the golden oak, recounting stories of his adventures to the grove, as if sharing his life with an old friend. One stormy night, as the winds howled and lightning illuminated the sky, Elias was called upon by the villagers. A massive oak had fallen, blocking the river that sustained their crops. Despite his age, Elias ventured into the heart of the storm, guided by the golden leaf's glow. The forest creatures joined him, their combined strength clearing the blockage just in time to prevent a flood. This act of unity and courage further cemented the bond between Elias and the enchanted forest. Though Elias grew old, his story lived on. The villagers thrived, passing down tales of the enchanted forest and the brave woodcutter who had protected it. His legacy endured in the songs sung by children and the rituals performed under the golden oak's shade. And deep within the woods, the golden oak tree continued to stand tall, a symbol of harmony and respect between humans and nature. Thank you for listening to this magical journey. Subscribe to Storietional and never miss a story that sparks your imagination. Welcome to Storietional, where stories come alive. If you enjoy heartfelt tales like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Now, let's continue. Alara sat back in her seat, her fingers trembling slightly as they clutched the edge of her coffee cup. Lucas's words echoed in her mind. I never stopped loving you. The simple truth of it hit her in a way she hadn't anticipated. She had spent so many years convincing herself that their love was a fleeting chapter of her life, a chapter that was best left closed. But sitting here in the quiet cafe, the weight of his words felt like a gentle nudge, urging her to look back at the pages of her past. Lucas had always been there, whether physically present or not. Even in the years they had spent apart, his memory had never truly left her. She'd seen fragments of him in every corner of the city, in every song that played on the radio, in the quiet moments when her thoughts wandered. And yet, she had chosen to silence those memories, to bury them under layers of new experiences, new loves, and new responsibilities. But the truth was impossible to ignore now. Her heart was telling her something she had long since denied, that Lucas had always been a part of her, and maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to find their way back to each other. You never stopped loving me, she said quietly, repeating his words. Her voice felt foreign, almost like she was speaking a truth that had been buried too deep. I don't know if I deserve that. After everything, after leaving like I did. Lucas reached across the table and placed his hand over hers, his touch warm and familiar. You don't have to apologize, Alara. I understand. You left to find yourself, and that's something I could never hold against you. What matters is that we're here now. Her breath caught in her throat as she looked into his eyes. They were filled with so many things. Love, yes, but also pain, longing, and something deeper, something that spoke of years of waiting and hoping for the moment when she would return. It made her chest ache. How had she left him behind so easily? Do you think we can start over? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Can we pick up where we left off? Lucas smiled gently, but there was a sadness in his eyes too. I don't know, Alara. I can't promise anything, but I'm willing to try. I've spent enough time wondering, what if? Maybe now it's time to find out. Alara nodded, her heart swelling with both fear and hope. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. They were no longer the same people who had sat in this cafe years ago. Life had changed them both, shaped them in ways they couldn't fully understand. But there was something undeniable about the connection they still shared. The evening passed in a blur of conversation, and by the time the sun had set, casting the cafe in a soft amber glow, Alara felt as though she had traveled through a different world. A world where the past was not a prison but a bridge, leading her back to the man she had once loved. The following days were filled with uncertainty, but also a quiet excitement that Alara hadn't felt in years. She and Lucas spent more time together, visiting old places they had frequented in their youth, places that carried the echoes of their laughter and whispers of their dreams. One afternoon, they found themselves at the riverbank where they had shared so many sunsets, their feet dangling over the edge of the wooden dock. The sound of the river rushing below them felt comforting, like a lullaby for their wandering souls. I remember when we used to come here every day after school, Alara said, her gaze fixed on the water. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. It was always so easy with you. It still is, Lucas replied, his voice gentle but filled with an honesty that made Alara's heart flutter. I'm not asking for everything to be perfect, Alara. I just want to be with you, however that looks. I want to see where this goes. Alara turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt. But all she found was sincerity and love. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. I've built a life in the city, Lucas. A life without you. I don't know if I can just throw it all away. But I also can't stop thinking about us. About what we could be. Don't think about throwing anything away, Lucas said, his hand brushing against hers. Think about building something new. Something that's ours. We don't have to rush. We have all the time we need. Alara took a deep breath, her heart racing as the weight of his words settled in her chest. She had spent so long trying to run away from her feelings, trying to convince herself that she was better off without him. But the truth was, she didn't want to be without him. She had always wanted him, always needed him, even if she had refused to admit it until now. I'm willing to try, she said finally, her voice steady. I don't know what the future holds, but I want to find out with you. Lucas's eyes brightened, and a smile tugged at the corners of his lips. That's all I need to hear. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others. Stay tuned for more heartfelt stories on Storietional. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Alara and Lucas found their way back to each other. Their relationship, once lost to time, now felt like something new, something stronger, more mature, more willing to embrace the complexities of their lives. But with every passing day, Alara couldn't help but wonder, was she truly ready to give up the life she had built in the city? And if she did, what would she find waiting for her in Ashford? Was it worth the risk to go back to the small town where it all began? She and Lucas spent quiet afternoons talking about the future, about the life they wanted to build together. They spoke of traveling the world, of writing a life story that was uniquely theirs. But with every dream they shared, another question lingered in the back of Alara's mind. Could she ever truly leave the city behind? Then one evening, Lucas asked her a question that would change everything. Alara, do you think you'll ever come back for good? Alara's heart skipped a beat. She had been avoiding the question, unsure of how to answer. But now, faced with his earnest gaze, she knew she had to confront it. I don't know, she said softly, her voice filled with uncertainty. But I want to try. I want to see what happens when I stop running away from what I truly want. Lucas smiled, his eyes shining with pride. Then let's see what happens. In the quiet town of Millstone, nestled between the dense woods and rolling hills, unsettling whispers floated on the wind. Stories of the black-eyed children, strange, eerie youths with coal-black eyes, had crept into the lives of the townsfolk. No one remembered when the tales had begun, but the fear they inspired was palpable. Curfew had become an unwritten law. Children disappeared without explanation, and the adults kept vigilant eyes on their windows after dark. This is a story of what happened when an ordinary evening turned into a tale of terror that would haunt Millstone for generations. Chapter 1. A Normal Evening. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting an amber glow over Millstone. Jenna Thompson sat at her kitchen table, finishing up her homework. At 12 years old, she felt the weight of the world pressing upon her. School assignments, social drama, and the nagging sense of the inexplicable that lingered in the air. Jenna, don't forget to help your brother with his dinner. Her mother called from the other room. Yeah, Mom? Jenna replied, trying to focus on the math problems before her. The faint buzz of the television played in the background, a soothing hum her mother relied on to drown out the silence of the lair they called home. But as the shadows deepened, a chill crept into the air. Jenna's mind wandered to the stories she had overheard in school about the black-eyed children. They were always told in hushed tones, a mixture of fear and disbelief coloring the pupils of those who recounted their encounters. Children who appeared on doorsteps, crying, asking to be let in, only to reveal their soulless, black eyes that evoked dread and madness. Stop it, Jenna, she muttered to herself, shaking her head. They're just stories. Yet fear settled in her stomach like a stone. Chapter 2. A Knock at the Door. A sudden knock at the door startled Jenna. She glanced at the clock. 8:45 p.m. far too late for any acquaintances to be visiting. Hesitantly, she rose from her chair and peered through the peephole, her heart pounding. Two children stood on the porch, silhouetted against the twilight. Their faces were obscured by the evening shadows, but Jenna could make out their narrow frames and tattered clothes. She felt a shiver race down her spine. "Who is it?" she called out, voice trembling ever so slightly. "Let us in, please," one of the children replied, the voice eerily calm. "We just need to come inside." "What do you want?" Jenna demanded, trying to appear brave even as her instincts screamed at her to retreat. "Just to talk," the second child said, their tone imploring yet demanding. "We're lost. It's cold out here." With caution, Jenna opened the door slightly, just enough to fend off the creeping dread that threatened to overwhelm her. Both children wore dirty coats, their hair stringy and disheveled. But it was their eyes that rendered her captive, pitch black and empty, giving off an unnatural aura that sent a jolt of fear straight through her. "Who are you?" she whispered. "We're just kids," the first one replied, stepping closer, their eyes glinting with something indescribable. "Please, let us in." Chapter 3. A fateful decision. In that moment of weakness, curiosity wrestled with fear inside Jenna's chest. She was drawn to the children, yet a primal instinct told her to slam the door and run. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, a warning about the strange, uninvited guests that prowled the towns and forests. Jenna, her smaller brother, Kyle, called from the living room. "Who is it?" The children turned their gaze toward the direction of Kyle's voice, and Jenna noticed a flicker of something dangerous in their expression. "Let us in, Jenna," they intoned in unison, their voices sinister and smooth, like silk wrapping around a razor blade. "Your brother will be safe with us. We just want to talk." Panic gripped her heart. "No, I can't." "Why not?" The other child pressed, encroaching on her space. Their noses nearly brushed against the edge of the door, the darkness behind their eyes beckoning her to surrender. "I'll call my mom," Jenna declared, though it felt like a feeble threat. "Your mother can't hear you," one of them hissed, suddenly inches away. "She's preoccupied." This unsettling certainty froze Jenna in place. Unable to resist, she flicked her eyes around the house, searching for reassurance. It was empty and silent. The warmth of home felt distant. Chapter 4. A wake-up call. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen as a pan fell to the ground. Jenna jumped, snapping back to the situation at hand. She locked eyes with the strange children again, feeling as if they were looking into her very soul, unraveling her sanity. "Open the door," they commanded, the childish shrieks now tinged with something more sinister. "Let us come in." Jenna positioned herself defensively, her breath shallow as she spun the deadbolt and leaned her weight against the door. They echoed the word "open" until it became a ritualistic chant in her mind, reverberating off the walls of her skull. Then, as if timed to the perfect warning, Jenna heard the garage door begin to rise. Clarity surged through her, a thought bursting so bright through the fog of fear. "Kyle, go hide!" she shouted, and without hesitation, he scrambled away, finding refuge under a heavy blanket on the couch. Chapter 5. The Black-Eyed Children. Panic spread through Jenna like wildfire. She grabbed her phone, but as she attempted to dial her mother, the signal flickered and faded the moment she pressed the call button. The children outside renewed their efforts, pounding on the door with an eerie rhythm. She glanced back at her younger brother, who stood wide-eyed, tears gathering in his eyes. "Oh, Mommy!" he cried at me too. Jenna whimpered. "Just stay back." She didn't even know what she was so afraid of, but the chill of their presence was undeniable. Suddenly, the knocking returned, more insistent and loud, like thunder crashing against the house. With each thump, the children outside grew restless. "Stop it!" Jenna shouted, pressing her back against the door, willing the children to disperse. "Listen to us. We are just children like you," they called out in perfect harmony, their voices laced with the sweet allure of deceit, manipulating the air with each syllable. "Open the door," they demanded again, voices rising in urgency. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. There's more excitement ahead. Chapter 6: The Escape. The urgency drove them back into the hallway, whirling away from the dreadful scene unfolding outside. Almost instinctively, they made their way to the main staircase, determined to seek refuge in the higher reaches of their home. As they ascended, the children's voices swirled around them, a cacophony of terror that taunted them from just beyond the front door. "You can't keep us out," one of them promised. "We're hungry." That dreadful moment, Jenna felt a surge of clarity. She grabbed her mother's hand, pulling her closer. "We need to call the police." But as she frantically attempted to make the call, a wave of cold swept through her, and her phone screen flickered ominously, then went black. "Mom, the phone!" she cried, throwing it across the room in frustration. "It's broken. We can't stay here," her mother said, panic etched across her face. "We need to find a way out." Suddenly, the front door crashed open again, the children's chanting becoming a rhythm of madness. "Listen to us. We are just children like you," they called out in unison, weaving their dark melody into the night. "No one is coming in. Get away from my kids," her mother commanded, protecting Jenna with her body. But the children merely stepped closer, their aura malignant, their whispers becoming a sickening serpent of chaos slithering into her mind. "You can't keep us out," one of them promised. "We're hungry." That dreadful moment, Jenna felt a surge of clarity. She grabbed her mother's hand, pulling her closer. "We need to call the police." Chapter 7: The Confrontation. Suddenly, the door rattled violently, and Jenna's heart raced faster. Memories of stories told around campfires flooded her mind. The dark legends of children who harbored malicious intent, who sought to steal souls or bring despair. Those who fell prey to their eerie charm never returned the same. "Open the door," they commanded, the childish shrieks now tinged with something more sinister. "Let us come in." Jenna positioned herself defensively, her breath shallow as she spun the deadbolt and leaned her weight against the door. They echoed the word "open" until it became a ritualistic chant in her mind, reverberating off the walls of her skull. Then suddenly, the front door burst open, and her mother stepped through, bags of groceries in hand. "What's wrong?" she exclaimed, her eyes darting between Jenna and the children. "Mom, don't let them in," Jenna shouted, barely able to breathe. The pitch of the children's voices shifted, becoming desperate yet commanding. "You will let us in, or there will be consequences." What's going on? Her mother gasped, slowly stepping backward as she realized the black-eyed children were flanking the porch. "Just some kids," Jenna replied, trying to exhibit an air of confidence. "They wanted to come in, but they're weird. I don't think they're okay." "Why are they staring at us?" Kyle asked, frowning and edging forward. "I don't know. Just stay back," Jenna ordered, her heart racing. Suddenly, the knocking returned, more insistent and loud, like thunder crashing against the house. With each thump, the children outside grew restless. "Stop it," Jenna shouted, pressing her back against the door, willing the children to disperse. "Listen to us. We are just children like you," they called out in perfect harmony, their voices laced with the sweet allure of deceit, manipulating the air with each syllable. "Open the door," they demanded again, voices rising in urgency. That dreadful moment, Jenna felt a surge of clarity. She grabbed her mother's hand, pulling her closer. "We need to go now." Chapter 8: Echoes of the Past. Time felt altered. Standing there, clutching the banister of their staircase, each second stretched into eternity. Jenna's heart pounded to a haunting tempo, a beat that intertwined with the echoes of the darkness below. Yet, as they braced themselves for the encounter, a wave of realization washed over Jenna. In that moment, she too began to understand the creeping essence of the black-eyed children. Sealed in silence, darkness, and despair, they drove on the fears of others, feeding on terror and desperation. The The walls of her home twisted, reflecting shadows that danced around her mind, and she understood now that it would take far more than courage to withstand this confrontation. They wouldn't just have to fend off these nightmarish entities. They'd have to confront the very essence of fear itself. Chapter 9. When night falls silent, the children's voices faded into an eerie lull. The darkness in the house thickened. Jenna clutched her mother's arm tighter, trying to summon the courage she feared had abandoned her. "They're gone," her mother finally whispered. "But we can't let our guard down." They waited, every creak of the house terrorizing their thoughts, echoing the dread that surrounded them. Minutes turned into an eternity until suddenly, an unnatural stillness enveloped them. "Should we go back down?" Jenna asked, her heart racing with uncertainty. Her mother hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but together." Slowly, the air held a chilled promise that brushed past them. With tentative steps, they ventured down the stairway, crossing their fingers that the kids had disappeared as mysteriously as they had arrived. They reached the bottom. Jenna felt an overwhelming emptiness. A sign of relief washed over them, but a deeper dread lurked with the knowledge that the darkness had not truly left. "Kyle?" they called as they turned into the living room. The shadows stretched long in the faint light, and the couch sat empty. A swallowed echo of despair gripped Jenna's chest. "No. Kyle!" she cried, panic igniting her voice. He was gone. Chapter 10. Into the woods. Fear clawed at Jenna's throat as she whipped around. "Mom, we have to find him." Her mother looked lost, searching every corner of the room. "He must have gone to the bathroom, or perhaps to find us," she murmured, her voice laced with desperation. "And oh." Jenna shook her head, her heart pounding. "You don't understand. He could be outside. They could be trying to take him." Together, they bursted through the front door and stepped out into the chilling night, frantically scanning the surroundings. The world had transformed. The moon hung heavy, casting shadows that rippled beyond their comprehension. "Shoo." Her mother hushed urgently. Her eyes widened as she listened keenly against the silence. But something shifted in the distance, a sound slithering through the trees, calling Jenna forward. She could feel it, a tug at her heart urging her deeper into the dense woods that loomed ahead. "We need to go back in," her mother said, but realization clicked into place. Soon enough, they too were mounting the stairs, taking refuge in the dank corners of darkness where their fears mingled with the echoes of artifacts long forgotten. Chapter 11. Shadows of the Past. Inside the attic, they gathered close, peeling away old layers of the past. Dust danced in the moonlight, filtering through the small window. But something shifted beyond the walls, the echoes of laughter swirling as the children lurked outside. "What if they come for us?" Kyle whispered, small shoulders trembling. "They won't find us here," Jenna reassured, heart beating wildly in her chest. Each second felt like eternity as they waited. The hallways trembled with whispering ghosts and shadows from beyond. They had to endure, to steel themselves against the unknown, but darkness nestled deep within their hearts. "Jenna," whispered her mother, reaching for her daughter's hand. "What will we do?" If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. There's more excitement ahead. Jenna didn't have any answers, just the weight of fear that echoed long before her. "We wait," she replied, fragile hope mingling with dread. But as the minutes ticked by, the ominous voice returned, soft, haunting, beckoning through the cracks in their sanctuary. "Jenna, let us not go away," she shouted, trembling as the sound twisted like poison in her ears. "That we just want to help," they sung. But she wouldn't yield. "Mommy, let's go back to the other rooms, please." As the energy thickened, the room dimmed, and tension wrapped around them, conjuring visions of abandonment and helplessness. Chapter 12. A Plan of Attack. "Mom," Jenna said, her hands shaking, "I think I know what we can do." "What?" her mother replied, eyes widening as she listened closely. "That we can drive them away. It's not about letting them in. We need to show them we are strong." Suddenly, a surge of electricity coursed through Jenna's veins, and an idea formed. What if we use the flashlights? Shine the light in their eyes. Her mother pondered, nodding excitedly. Good idea. We need to blind them. With unity, they emptied boxes of clutter, uncovering long-forgotten treasures and old flashlights. In the cramped attic, shadows morphed, becoming tangible forms as their whispers intensified. When they finally flicked the lights on, the attic flickered to life, illuminating the quiet corners and shimmering dust near the window. Then on the count of three, whispered Jenna's mother, firm and steady. With every ounce of courage rallying within them, they prepared to confront their nightmare, to face the shadows that haunted their existence. Point one, two, three. They yelled, shining the flashlights toward the attic door as the darkness coiled below. Chapter 13. The final struggled. As the children's forms emerged in front of them, Jenna led the charge, unleashing beams of blinding light towards the encroaching figures at the door. Get back, she shouted, the flashlights sweeping like swords against the creeping despair. Bright, too bright, the children shrieked. With their voices rising to a fever pitch, the shadows recoiled, revealing their true shapes and distorting before them. Panic began to bubble as their embrace of darkness faltered. The light held strong against the void. You cannot keep us out, they hissed, yet the brightness held firm, pushing away the encroaching darkness and revealing the truth at the heart of their intentions, that in your eyes lies fear. One child echoed, pain reflected within even as they writhed in the light, that I won't let you take my brother. Jenna screamed, swinging the flashlight wide. The glowing beams blazed through the room, tearing apart the shadows that clawed at the edges of their sanctuary. Enough, her mother cried, and together they held their ground. Yes, the children shrieked. Flickers of darkness shattered like glass, fading into the night. Shadows dissipated one by one until the attic grew quiet, a whisper replacing shadow. Chapter 14. Moments of clarity. Finally, they held their ground long enough. The voices diminished, the atmosphere returning to calmness once again. Breathing heavily, they collapsed, laying against the attic floor, hearts racing yet united. Are they gone? Kyle asked, breathless. Did I think so? Jenna replied, searching her mother's eyes for assurance. What will we do now? Her mother sighed, relief and exhaustion mingling in her tone. That I just want to go downstairs and pretend this never happened, Jenna murmured. But deep within, they each knew better. Their lives would forever be altered. The tales of the black-eyed children weren't just stories. They served as warnings. And whatever allure darkness had held over them had been shattered, dispelled in an act of defiance. Chapter 15. Homecoming. As dawn broke, a soft orange hue replaced the remnants of the night, painting the world anew. Somewhere, birds chirped cautiously, reflecting their fragile hope. As the family stirred, half terrified yet victorious, they began their descent back to the living room, their hearts longing for normalcy. The presence of the children lingered like a shadow in their thoughts, but a newfound strength held sway within them. They knew fear would always exist, but courage could conquer. Peeking outside, the world was anew, vibrant and alive, while the memories of the last night battled against their hearts. They stepped through the door, all three, today marking a new legacy. That let's not speak of this again, Jenna's mother said quietly. But as they shared glances of understanding, it became evident that this shared experience made them stronger. The bond held firm, a testament to hope forged against the darkness that threatened to engulf them. Even at the fringes of Millstone, whispers of the black-eyed children swirled like ghosts, but they no longer feared them. They had learned that courage does not emerge from the absence of fear, but rather from facing it head-on. Epilogue. Legends never die. Years later, as the stories of the black-eyed children continued to twist in the hearts of locals, Jenna, now an adult, shared her tale with her children around campfires. With every word, the legacy of that fateful night took shape. Etched in time, whispers swirling through the woods, bringing both chills and understanding. The darkness is a part of life, she told them, but you must learn to find the light within it. Always remember, your strength lies in the courage you muster in the face of the unknown. And as the story spread, Jenna knew that through every generation, legends would never die. They would live on, carving their own path, forever reminding all who listen to embrace the light amidst the shadows. Courage in the shadows. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please hit the bell. In the quiet town of Eldridge, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, there existed a small library, a charming yellow brick building with ivy crawling up its walls. It was here, amidst the dusty books and whispers of stories left untold, that 18-year-old Clara Bennett spent most of her time. An introverted girl with a passion for reading, Clara found solace in fiction. But reality was a different story. Clara had always felt out of place. A timid girl with a wild imagination, she often found herself drowned in her thoughts while others laughed and socialized around her. At school, words were like a labyrinth. Her anxiety twisted them into knots that suffocated her voice. She was the girl who sat alone at lunch, the one who quietly slipped into the background during group projects, overshadowed by the vibrant personalities of her peers. Yet within the pages of those books, Clara discovered strength. She lost herself in tales of heroism, adventure, and love, stories where characters faced insurmountable odds and emerged victorious. It was through these narratives that she dreamed of making a difference, but fear held her back from stepping into her own story. One summer evening, while sorting through a pile of returned books at the library, Clara stumbled upon an old, leather-bound volume tucked away on the highest shelf. Drawing it out, a layer of dust danced in the evening light that filtered through the window. The title, Courage in the Shadows, was embossed in gold and seemed to beckon her to explore its secrets that as she flipped through its pages, Clara found tales of individuals who, against all odds, embraced their fears and changed the world around them. Each story unfolded with a vividness that electrified her spirit. There was the tale of a young girl who stood up against bullying, offering friendship instead of retaliation. Another recounted a soldier who faced his deepest fears to rescue comrades in danger. The stories ignited something within Clara, a flicker of hope that maybe she too could find her voice. That night, sleep came reluctantly, her mind racing with thoughts of the characters who had displayed such bravery. Clara decided she had to do something. Inspired by the stories she had read, she resolved to help those around her in her own, quiet way. The opportunity presented itself sooner than expected. The following week, news broke in Eldridge about a local community garden project aimed at providing fresh produce to families in need. The project had received a generous grant, but the committee was struggling to rally volunteers to transform the neglected land into a flourishing garden. Clara's heart raced with determination. This was her chance to make a difference. The very thought of standing in a group, speaking to strangers, sent her heart into a frantic rhythm. But memories of the courageous figures from the book anchored her resolve. With every ounce of willpower, she signed up to volunteer. That on the morning of the project, Clara stood at the garden, taking deep breaths as she watched other volunteers arrive. Families, friends, and neighbors filled the space, their laughter and excitement overwhelming her senses. For a moment, doubt crept in, whispering that she didn't belong, that she would simply fade into the background. But then she remembered the stories, the girls who stood up, the soldiers who ran into danger, the heroes who weren't defined by their fears but by their courage to face them. Clara walked forward, heart pounding but determined. She approached a group digging in the dirt, taking the plunge into her own narrative. "Hi, is there anything I can help with?" Her voice surprised even herself. It was steadier than she had anticipated. The group paused, surprised by the soft-spoken girl who had ventured into their midst. A friendly woman named Laura smiled warmly. "Of course. We're clearing out this section for tomato plants. Would you like to help?" As Clara knelt in the soil, hands digging in the warm earth, she felt a sense of belonging begin to bloom. Laughter filled the air, and before long, she found herself engaged in conversation. She listened to stories of the volunteers, shared her thoughts, and even made a new friend in Laura who invited her to join a book club. Days turned into weeks, and the garden flourished, a vibrant testament to the collaboration of the community. Clara's heart swelled with pride every time she ventured there. It had transformed from an empty patch into a thriving sanctuary filled with life and laughter. But the garden was just the beginning. One evening, as Clara watered the plants, she noticed a small child standing hesitantly at the edge of the garden, eyes wide with curiosity. The girl looked lost, her expression mirroring Clara's old feelings of isolation. Driven by a newfound courage, Clara approached her. "Hi there. Would you like to help me water the flowers?" she asked, kneeling to meet the child's gaze. The girl's face lit up, and she quickly nodded. Clara showed her how to hold the watering can correctly, the two of them giggling as a little water splashed onto the ground rather than the plants. That moment was monumental. Clara's heart swelled with the feeling she had long sought, the joy of connection. With each day, Clara found her voice more clearly. She took on responsibilities in the garden, leading groups of children and planting flowers, teaching them how to care for the earth. As she spoke, her anxiety began to fade, replaced by conviction. Her fear had transformed into a powerful drive to inspire the next generation to take action in their community. The local news even caught wind of their project, publishing an article about the community garden, highlighting Clara's integral role in its success. For the first time, she felt recognized, not as the shy girl in the background, but as a valuable contributor to something meaningful. As the summer drew to a close, Clara organized a harvest festival to celebrate their efforts. Families gathered in abundance, laughter and joy echoing in the air. As Clara stood before the crowd, she felt the familiar pang of nerves, but the courage she had cultivated over the summer surged within her. "Thank you all for believing in this project," she began, her voice steady. "This garden isn't just a place to grow food. It's a testament to what we can achieve together, no matter how small we start." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and Clara couldn't help but smile, her heart bursting with gratitude. She was finally ready to step into her own story, a story steeped in courage, resilience, and hope. As the sun set over the garden, casting a golden hue across the faces of her newfound friends, Clara realized that courage isn't the absence of fear. It is the determination to act despite it. She had found her voice in the shadows, transforming it into a light that inspired not just herself, but an entire community. And in that moment, surrounded by the laughter of children and the warmth of connection, Clara knew she had finally become the hero of her own story. Welcome to Storietional. If you love captivating short stories, you're in the right place. Here, you'll enjoy Persian stories read in English, helping you improve your language skills while experiencing great tales. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Sophie Miller stood at the edge of the gravel driveway, staring up at the imposing structure that loomed before her. Hollow Manor was as breathtaking as it was daunting, its dark stone facade silhouetted against the setting sun. Ivy clung to the walls like an ever-encroaching shadow, and the gnarled branches of ancient trees whispered secrets in the evening breeze. A shiver danced up her spine, but it was a thrill of excitement that sent most of the shivers through her. She was finally here. As a graduate student in folklore and urban legends, Sophie had spent years reading about haunted houses and the stories intertwined with them. But this was different. This wasn't just a scholarly pursuit. This was an adventure. The invitation had come in the form of a cryptic letter, delivered without a return address, urging her to uncover the truth that lay within the manor's walls. The letter signed off ominously with an invitation. "Come for the stories. Stay for the secrets." She exhaled sharply, bringing her focus back to the present. Clutching her leather satchel tightly, she stepped forward, muscles tense with anticipation. The trek up the winding path felt longer than it had in her mind, her footsteps crunching on the gravel as she took in the overgrown garden, which seemed to have been abandoned for decades. Wildflowers and weeds trailed up the stone steps leading to the heavy oak door, each step echoing the unease radiating through her body. With an effort, Sophie pulled the door open. It creaked ominously on its hinges, revealing a dark foyer that smelled of dust and time. The rich wood paneling was faded. The brilliant chandelier above hung precariously, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. Taking a cautious step inside, she brushed her fingers against the railing of the staircase, noting how the wood felt cool beneath her touch. "Are you Miss Miller?" A voice broke through her thoughts, startling her. She turned to find a tall man with disheveled brown hair and kind, albeit wary, eyes standing in the doorway to a side room. "Yes, I am," Sophie replied, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart raced. "I'm Jacob, the caretaker," he introduced himself, stepping forward. "I wasn't sure if you would really come." "I wasn't sure either, to be honest," she admitted with a nervous laugh, her grip on the satchel tightening. "But I'm here now." Jacob studied her for a moment before nodding as if to himself. "Fair enough. Welcome to Hollow Manor." As he led her through the dimly lit halls, Sophie felt an odd sensation, as if the walls were listening, their secrets woven into every creak of the floorboards. Jacob explained the layout of the manor, the library, the drawing room, the dining hall, and more. Each room had its charm, but they were all draped in shadows and dust, remnants of a life that once thrived here. After a brief tour, Jacob left her to settle in, promising to return in an hour to discuss the house's history. Sophie chose the library as her temporary sanctuary. Tall bookshelves lined the walls, their contents mostly obscured by dust. She felt drawn to the room's heavy atmosphere, a combination of nostalgia and sorrow that seemed to seep from every pore of the ancient wood as she made herself comfortable in a plush, yet slightly worn, armchair. She opened her satchel to take out her notebook. This would be the perfect opportunity to note her impressions, jot down ideas, and begin her research. Sophie flipped to a blank page and began writing. The air in Hollow Manor feels thick, burdened with stories waiting to be told. "I can feel the presence of something here, something alive yet distant. Perhaps the echo of Eleanor Hollow herself, that a sudden gust of wind rattled the window, causing her to jump." She glanced outside, where the sky was turning a deep shade of indigo, the last of the sunlight swallowed by encroaching clouds. The storm they had predicted was upon her faster than she thought, thunder rumbling softly in the distance. Suddenly, a profound silence enveloped the library. Sophie looked around, her senses heightened. It was as if the house held its breath, waiting. Just as she dismissed the feeling as her imagination running wild, she heard it, a faint whisper, so soft it was almost indiscernible. Curiosity piqued. She stood and moved toward the sound. It seemed to be coming from a nearby corner where the shadows gathered thickest, near a set of double doors she hadn't noticed before. Taking a hesitant step closer, she reached for the cold handle, her breath hitching in her throat. With a firm push, the doors creaked open, revealing a darkened room filled with stacks of old furniture draped in sheets. In the center stood a large, ornate mirror, its surface clouded with grime. Sophie stepped inside, curiosity overwhelming her initial trepidation. She extended her hand, brushing away some of the dust from the mirror's frame. And then she saw it, a flicker of movement in the reflection, a glimpse of a figure standing behind her. Heart racing, she spun around, but the room was empty. "Is anyone there?" she called, her voice bouncing back in eerie echoes. Silence answered her query, heavy and thick. Perhaps it was just her imagination, a trick of the dim light or the creeping shadows. Shaking off the daze, she turned back to the mirror. It reflected her pale complexion, wide eyes, and the sigh of relief that coursed through her when she realized she was alone. But something was different. The air crackled with energy, a static charge that sent shivers through her. Sophie leaned closer, peering into the depths of the glass. Instead of her own reflection, she felt as if she was peering through to another world, one filled with whispers and secrets, so close yet just out of reach. The storm outside raged, bolts of lightning illuminating the windows, casting fleeting shadows across the room. Sophie felt the air grow colder with each clap of thunder, as if the house itself was breathing in sync with the tempest. Her heart raced, anticipation building within her. This was more than just a haunted house. This was a portal to a past that demanded to be discovered. The thrill of the unknown compelled her to reach out once more, her fingers grazing the old mirror's surface. Just as she did, another whisper echoed, clearer this time. "Help me." Sophie recoiled at the sound, her breath coming in quick gasps. She dared not believe what she had just heard. Could the tales be true? Was the spirit of Eleanor Hollow reaching out from beyond the veil, seeking release, or was it something more sinister lurking in the shadows of Hollow Manor? With more determination than fear, Sophie stepped back, her heart resolute. She would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. She would not flee the ghostly whispers, but instead embrace them. The night was still young, and in the heart of Hollow Manor, Sophie knew that the Real story was just beginning. Sophie took a step back from the mirror, her mind racing. The whisper was so vivid, so haunting, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that it was merely the echoes of her overactive imagination. Despite that, something inside her stirred, compelling her to dig deeper into the history that lay buried within the walls of Hollow Manor. She backed away from the mirror and returned to the library, her pulse still quickening with every heartbeat. She wanted to immerse herself in the mystery, and the best way to do that was to unearth the secrets of the house and Eleanor Hollow. Sophie powered through the stuffy air of the library, scanning the narrow aisles until she found a stack of old books hidden beneath a layer of dust. They looked weathered yet promising. She picked up the first one, its cover faded and cracking, The Hollow Family, a History. The title intrigued her. This was precisely what she needed. Settling into the armchair with the book open on her lap, Sophie began to read. Pages described the grandeur of the Hollow family, their rise to prominence, and the unfortunate tragedies that befell them. Accidents, scandals, and then the most discussed event of all, the disappearance of Eleanor Hollow. As Sophie turned the pages, the rain pattered insistently against the windows, the storm intensifying. Where once the house had felt merely ancient and forgotten, it now seemed alive, each raindrop echoing like footsteps in the ornate halls. She learned that Eleanor, the youngest daughter in a line of privilege, was known for her beauty and intellect, but she was also rumored to have had a fiery spirit that often led her into trouble. Among the townsfolk, stories circulated about her late-night escapades and her peculiar friendships with eccentric locals. It seemed a part of Eleanor longed for adventure outside the constraints of the manor. And then, almost in a whisper concealed by the dusty layers of time, it is said that Eleanor knew secrets buried deep within Hollow Manor, secrets that could unravel the very foundation of her family's legacy. Sophie's heart raced. She had to uncover those secrets. Was this why Eleanor had reached out to her? The thought made her blood tingle with urgency. The old journal from earlier flashed in her mind. Perhaps it held more clues. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, she hurried back to the room with the mirror, now determined to search thoroughly. Dust motes danced in the air as she rummaged through the layers of furniture, the musty smell of old fabric filling her nostrils. Finally, she found the journal tucked away in a narrow drawer of a small writing desk. Its leather cover was embossed with floral patterns, and it felt warm to the touch, as if alive. Gently opening it, Sophie delicately turned the pages, which were filled with elegant script, Eleanor's own hand. The first few pages detailed mundane observations of daily life, but soon, the tone shifted abruptly. I fear I may lose myself in the depths of this manor if I do not find a way to escape its grasp. I have discovered whispers that lead to darkness, hidden within the walls. There is an ancient secret that speaks of a key to freedom, but with it comes great peril. I must tread lightly. Sophie's breath caught as the shadows in the room grew heavier. The mention of a key intrigued her, but what could it unlock? She read on, the entries becoming increasingly erratic, often breaking off mid-sentence. The chandelier sings at midnight. I must find the key before it finds me. Jacob warns me of the dangers. He knows more than he lets on. Sophie's mind swirled with questions, but one stood out among the rest. Who was Jacob, really? The enigmatic caretaker had seemed wary, perhaps even scared. Did he harbor his own secrets about the manor? She needed to confront him. Almost instinctively, she closed the journal and set off in search of Jacob, her resolve steeled. The old wooden floors groaned under her feet as she navigated the winding pathways of the manor. Sophie found him in the drawing room, poring over a stack of documents. He looked up as she entered, his expression shifting to one of alarm. "What's wrong?" he asked, brow furrowed, as if he anticipated something dreadful. "I need to know more about this place," she replied, the urgency in her voice undeniable. "And about Eleanor. Her journal speaks of dangers and secrets. You must know something." Jacob hesitated, glancing toward the large windows where the storm clashed violently against the glass. "You shouldn't be digging into the past, Sophie. It's best to leave it alone. The manor has its own ways of protecting its secrets." "But I'm not afraid," she exclaimed, her passion igniting. "Eleanor reached out to me. I need to understand what happened to her. What was she trying to protect?" He seemed to soften at her conviction, his shoulders relaxing as he set down the papers. "Eleanor was—" he paused, choosing his words. "She was a complicated person. She sought to uncover the truth behind the family's tragedies, believing that there were hidden elements within the manor that contributed to their demise. But sometimes, seeking the truth can lead to danger." Sophie interrupted, her curiosity palpable. "Yes," Jacob conceded. "There are tales, legends that warn of the consequences of unearthing the past. Wild magic, curses, revenge, it's all tied to this place and its history. Not everything can be explained logically. Sometimes, spirits manifest in ways we can't comprehend." Sophie took a breath, the weight of his words settling over her like a shroud. "What about the key?" Eleanor mentioned it in her journal. Jacob's expression darkened. "The key is one of those stories that has survived the years, whispered through the town and spoken of in hushed tones." His gaze turned distant. "It's said to unlock something hidden in the manor that could shed light on the family's darkest secrets. But no one knows what truly lies behind that door, or the consequences of opening it." Invigorated but unsettled, Sophie felt her next move crystallizing in her mind. "I need to find it. Consider this carefully," Jacob warned, his eyes narrowing. "Some doors are best left closed." But Sophie was already moving, her determination unwavering. "If we don't open the door, we'll never know what's behind it, and I believe Eleanor deserves that chance." Jacob watched her for a long moment, then sighed. "Very well. If you're determined to pursue this, I will help you. But we must tread carefully. The manor's whispers grow louder at night, more powerful. We'll have to work quickly to unravel its secrets before the storm reveals the true face of its darkness." The storm continued to rage outside, the wind howling around the manor like a malevolent spirit. But within the heart of Hollow Manor, Sophie felt a flicker of hope. Together, she and Jacob would embark on a journey deeper into the mysteries that shrouded the house and the restless spirit of Eleanor Hollow. They worked through the night, each crack of thunder seemingly urging them on. As hour after hour passed, they examined the vast library and the old archives, piecing together folklore and history, hunting for any mention of the key and what secrets it might unveil. Finally, just as midnight approached, Jacob glanced at the ornate grandfather clock in the corner, its pendulum swinging slowly and deliberately. "We should investigate the chandelier she wrote about," he suggested, his voice steady. "If it sings at midnight, perhaps it's connected to the key we're searching for." Sophie nodded, adrenaline coursing through her veins once more. "Let's go." They made their way to the grand foyer beneath the chandelier. the ornate structure a dazzling relic of a time long past. The air crackled with anticipation, as if the very fibers of the house awaited the arrival of the witching hour. As the clock struck 12, a deep rumble resonated through the manor, and the chandelier began to sway gently, its crystals catching the low light and refracting it into 1,000 dancing rainbows. And then they heard it, a soft hum, almost melodic, resonating through the air like a forgotten lullaby. As Sophie stood mesmerized by the sound, the energy in the room shifted dramatically, igniting an electrifying sensation in her chest. "It's alive!" Sophie exclaimed. "The whispers, can you hear them?" "Yes," Jacob whispered, his expression a mixture of awe and fear. "We need to act quickly." They moved closer, and as they stood directly under the chandelier, the hum intensified, enveloping them in a cocoon of warmth. In a moment of instinct, Sophie glanced up at the chandelier, noting several ornate crystals seeming to stir in the glow of the flickering light. An ancient mechanism clicked into place, and the central crystal of the chandelier disengaged with a low thud, lowering itself before them. Its surface glimmered enticingly, revealing intricate engravings that resembled the patterns in Eleanor's journal. Jacob's eyes widened in disbelief. Could this be it? With bated breath, Sophie reached for the crystal, feeling the warmth radiating from it. It must be. It has to be. It's the key. She lifted it, feeling a surge of energy pulse through her, connecting her to the very essence of the manor. They exchanged awestruck glances. The crystal, undeniably significant, seemed to hum with life itself, as if it carried the weight of the secrets they'd sought. "Now what?" Jacob asked, his voice strained. Sophie glanced around, suddenly acutely aware of the swirling shadows clinging to the corners of the room. "We find the door it unlocks," she declared, her heart racing in anticipation. The two of them shared a determined look, then ventured forth, the crystal glowing softly in Sophie's hand, guiding them through the halls of the manor. The house seemed to pulse with energy, its whispers growing louder as they approached what felt like an apex of activity. They reached a door at the end of a narrow corridor they hadn't initially noticed, a door that had always been shrouded in darkness, its surface carved with intricate symbols and designs. "This has to be it," Sophie breathed, steeling her voice. "Are you prepared for what lies beyond?" Jacob's tone was serious, laced with concern. Sophie nodded, her face resolute. "We need to unlock it for Eleanor." As she inserted the crystal into the keyhole, she felt a tremor coursing through the house, and the whispers erupted into a chorus of haunting echoes, snatches of conversations, cries, and laughter. Then, with a sudden click, the door creaked open, and a rush of cold air spilled out, wrapping around them like a shroud. With a deep breath, they stepped inside, the door closing behind them with a finality that reverberated in the silence. What awaited them within the chamber was unlike anything they could have prepared for. Rich tapestries draped the walls, depicting the legacy of the Hollow family in vivid colors. An enormous table stood at the center, covered in faded documents and artifacts, a treasure trove of history lying in wait. But it was the painting above the table that drew Sophie's gaze. It depicted Eleanor, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing, as if she yearned to be freed from some unseen burden. And just below her in the painting, shadows curled, almost alive, hinting at a darkness that lurked beneath the surface. As the glowing crystal pulsed in Sophie's hand, the whispers in the room grew louder, morphing into low cries filled with pain. The atmosphere shifted, filling with dread, and Sophie's heart raced. "Eleanor, are you here?" Sophie called out, attempting to pierce the suffocating silence that in response. The shadows around the painting began to twist, coalescing into a ghostly form that took on the figure of Eleanor herself. She hovered just above the ground, her expression a mixture of gratitude and despair. "Seek the truth," Eleanor's spectral voice echoed, a melody of sorrow. But beware, for in the darkness lies a choice between freedom and despair. Sophie's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? What must we do? Eleanor's gaze seemed to pierce through her, and for a moment, Sophie felt as if she could see not just the spirit, but her history, the weight of her pain. The key to my freedom lies not just within this manor, but within the hearts of those who dwell in its shadow. Find the truth that binds us, and you will uncover the secret. But choose wisely, for truths reveal consequences. Before Sophie could respond, the vision began to fade. Eleanor, wait! Sophie cried, but the spirit waned, leaving only the echoes of her lament, fractured and sorrowed. The air in the chamber thickened once more, the shadows swirling ominously. Sophie turned to Jacob, uncertainty flooding her features. What does it all mean? What choice? I don't know, Jacob admitted, his expression grave. But we can't leave it like this. We must investigate further. We need to decipher what ties Eleanor and her family to the darkness. With renewed determination, they began to sift through the documents strewn across the table, seeking answers. Pages revealed Eleanor's attempts to confront and understand the darkness that clung to her family. A darkness rooted in betrayal, unfulfilled ambitions, and a loyalty that had twisted into something grotesque. Hours slipped by as they pored over the contents of the chamber, each piece of paper unraveling threads of a narrative that spanned decades. They read about a lost treasure hidden within the manor, a fortune that had drawn greed and betrayal into its grasp. As dawn approached, Sophie discovered a faded map, its surface marked with symbols that matched those adorning the locked door. Her fingers traced the lines that led deeper into the estate's grounds, toward a crypt hidden beneath the manor. Jacob, look! This must be where they buried their secrets. She pointed excitedly, a sense of revelation washing over her. The key must be connected to this crypt. This is where we'll find out the truth. Jacob studied the map closely, tension etched on his face. If we go there, we're not just facing ghosts of the past. We're risking everything. We must make sure we're ready for whatever awaits us. I know the risks, Sophie said earnestly, but Eleanor's spirit deserves peace. We have to see this through. With that shared resolve, they gathered their courage and prepared to descend into the depths of Hollow Manor, to confront the darkness that had lingered so long, that had ensnared Eleanor and her family, and to seize the truth that could finally free its restless spirit. As they made their way through the narrow passages leading to the crypt, the temperature dropped sharply. The storm had receded, but a chilling breeze accompanied them, whispering warnings of what lay ahead. Each step resonated with uncertainty, the very air crackling with static. They reached the crypt entrance, evident by a heavy stone door engraved with ominous symbols. It mirrored the one that housed Eleanor's painting. Sophie felt a deep connection forming. The glowing crystal pulsed in her hand, urging her onward. Are you ready? Jacob's voice was steady but edged with trepidation. Sophie nodded, determination pressing her forward. Yes. Together, they pushed the massive door open, the sound echoing through the stone corridors. Inside lay a small chamber dimly lit by shafts of light filtering through cracks in the stone. Skeletons of forgotten stories lay scattered across the floor. Bones, relics, and decay, remnants of all that the Hollow family had buried. That in the center was an intricately carved sarcophagus, its form adorned with a stunning angelic figure holding an ornate key. Sophie's heart raced again. This had to be it. The key to unlock the truth. Just as they approached, a deep shudder rolled through the crypt. Shadows flared to life, coalescing into dark figures that loomed against the walls, their voices tangled in furious whispers. Leave this place. One of the voices boomed, resonating through the chamber like thunder. You awaken what should remain asleep. Sophie stood her ground, gripping the crystal tightly. We seek only the truth. Eleanor deserves to be free, to be at peace. The ghostly figures hesitated, their forms flickering as if they were unsure how to respond. Peace is but a whisper, another voice hissed. You know not what you challenge. But Sophie pressed on. What is bound here, what enslaves you, must be revealed. We can break these chains together. The specters howled in anguish, their forms rippling like smoke caught in a tempest. Outlined against the swirling darkness, Eleanor's figure emerged, vibrant and fierce. Fear not the shadows, she declared, her voice echoing powerfully, but also fear their truths. With the energy of the crystal intensifying, Sophie stepped forward, feeling an undeniable pull toward the sarcophagus. Eleanor, I will help you, but you must guide me. The angelic figure on the sarcophagus seemed to glow brighter as Eleanor's spectral essence enveloped it. The key is not just a relic of the past. It binds you to the present. You must decide. Sophie reached out for the sarcophagus. The moment her fingers touched the cold stone, a vision erupted before her eyes. Chaotic images flashing like a broken film reel. She saw the hollows, their greed, their betrayals, and the tragedy that had unfolded within these very walls. But in the wreckage of loss, she glimpsed hope, a family torn apart by secrets, yet caught in the threads of love and sorrow. A choice loomed in her mind, solidifying with each heartbeat. I understand, she gasped. I choose to unveil the truth. As the words resonated through the crypt, light exploded from the crystal in her hand. The shadows recoiled, their anguished cries rising in pitch, intertwining with Eleanor's. Do it, Eleanor urged. Free us. With newfound resolve, Sophie placed her hand on the angel figure atop the sarcophagus, invoking the energy swirling within the chamber. The moment her fingers connected, the angelic figure vibrated, and the world around her dissolved into brilliant light that a cacophony erupted. The voices of those bound in darkness erupted in a final chorus. The truth is unveiled. As the brilliance enveloped them, the shadows broke apart in a shattering flash, revealing the crypt in its true state. No longer a prison of despair, but a sanctuary of memory. The heavy air lightened, filling with warmth. Eleanor stood before Sophie, glowing with peace. You have chosen wisely, child of light. My family's secrets are laid bare, and the cycle is broken. Go with my gratitude. As the last remnants of darkness faded, Sophie felt the weight of the years lift from her shoulders. The sorrow tethered to Hollow Manor dissolved, replaced by a cleansing light, as if laughter had begun to replace screams. Together, she and Jacob exited the crypt, the early morning light streaming through the manor's windows. The oppressive silence had transformed into a soft, gentle hum of a new day. Outside, the storm clouds were banished, leaving a pristine blue sky in their wake. Sophie smiled, her heart swelling as she looked back at the once foreboding structure. Hollow Manor had been transformed, its haunting whispers receding into a tender memory. What now? Jacob asked, awestruck and relieved. Sophie knew their journey was far from over. History had been reframed, but it still needed to be told. With certainty in her voice, she replied, Now we share the stories. The truth deserves to be known, and Eleanor deserves to be remembered. And with that, she stepped into the light, ready to tell the tale of Hollow Manor and the truth that had set its spirit free. The glow of twilight was fading, leaving behind a washed-out sky that stained the landscape with shades of gray. Each step taken down the narrow path into the woods felt like a journey through memory, peeling back layers of time as she moved closer to Ashwood Hollow. The scent of damp earth mixed with decay filled the air, a pungent reminder of the loss that lingered here. 5 years had slipped by since the day everything changed, yet not a moment passed without the weight of grief settling heavily on her chest. That Hayam Hafez and welcome to Storietional. Before we continue this chilling tale, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the like button if you enjoyed this story. Your support helps us bring more terrifying tales to life. Stay tuned for more spine-tingling adventures. Fingers trembling, she clutched a silver locket that hung around her neck, an anchor to the past she couldn't seem to escape. Inside it lay a photograph of two gleaming faces, carefree and innocent, surrounded by the familiar warmth of sunshine. Alex had grinned wide in that picture, his features alive with laughter that seemed impossible to imagine now. Abruptly, he was gone, swallowed by a darkness that had risen like a tide, claiming him without a trace as dusk settled in. The trees grew thick, their gnarled roots intertwining like the memories that twisted in her mind. The laughter from that last summer afternoon was still haunting, echoing in her ears. "Catch me if you can," Alex had shouted, darting into the woods, daring silence to chase him. And she had followed, her laughter mingling with his, until the night cloaked them both in shadow. But the laughter had faded, swallowed up by the stark, suffocating silence that blanketed the woods the moment he disappeared. "Alex," she called out, the word a fragile whisper carried on the wind, twisting into the silence that enveloped her like a shroud. Crickets chirped, their sounds echoing like an eerie chorus of voices. Her heart raced, each beat thrumming in her ears as the shadows lengthened around her. She forced the image of Alex from her mind, concentrating instead on the dark path ahead. Today was meant to be different. Today was for finding peace. The moon broke through the tangled canopy above, illuminating the jagged path ahead. And for a moment, she stood transfixed by the silvery light spilling across the ground. She had come to confront the shadow of Ashwood Hollow, a place where nightmares were birthed from grief and where she hoped to find answers, or at least some semblance of solace. As she ventured deeper into the hollow, memories pressed against her like heavy fog. A series of unsettling sounds began to whisper in the distance, crunching leaves, snapping twigs, the faintest murmur of laughter. A knot of fear twisted in her stomach, an instinct screaming at her to turn back. But she pressed on, driven by an invisible force, a need that compelled her to face the specter of her past. She reached a clearing, an ancient oak rising proudly at its center like a sentinel. This tree was twisted and gnarled, its branches outstretched as if trying to protect a hidden truth within its roots. As she approached, she placed her hand on the rough bark, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath it, as if the tree were alive, bearing witness to her pain. Tears brimmed in her eyes as memories cascaded like falling leaves. A childhood like a fairy tale, marred by one single, dark chapter. Her fingers brushed the roughness of the bark, and in that moment, something shifted. The air around her thickened, a palpable tension rising, and the whispers grew louder, coalescing into a chorus of voices that danced just out of reach of comprehension. And then, as if summoned by her sorrow, a figure appeared in the thicket at the edge of the clearing. At first, it was merely a silhouette against the night, an ethereal presence that could easily be dismissed as a trick of the light. But as she squinted into the shadows, her breath caught in her throat. It was him. Emily, the figure called softly, the voice resonating with familiarity and longing. Alex, her heart raced faster than it had ever beat before. "Alex," she breathed, a tremor of disbelief coursing through her body. The shadows began to shift around him as he stepped forward, his features bathed in silver moonlight. He looked just as she remembered, tousled hair, mischievous grin, but those eyes, those once bright, spirited eyes, were now tinged with an unsettling darkness. "Why did you come back here?" he asked, his voice echoing against the bark of the trees. I needed to find you. I needed to know what happened," she replied. Stepping forward, heart pounding, he shook his head, a sorrowful smile playing on his lips. "Some things are better left buried, Em. You can't bring back the past." "No," she argued, desperation clawing at her throat. "I can't let you go. I need to know the truth." The shadows shifted again, and for a fleeting second, she saw something lurking behind him, an unfamiliar darkness, writhing and whispering, like a living entity eager to consume all it touched. Fear unfurled inside her. "Stay away from it," she warned, fear spilling over into her voice. "It isn't me you should fear," Alex said, but his smile faltered, and the darkness danced closer, a mere breath away from enveloping him. "What do you mean?" Emily's voice trembled as the realization began to dawn upon her. The shadows weren't just the remnants of the woods. They were part of him now. The very essence of Ashwood Hollow had taken root in him, feeding off the sorrow and despair that had plagued them all. You have to let me go before it's too late," he urged, stepping back, the shadows chasing him. "No." I won't lose you again, she cried, fighting against the tide of grief that threatened to pull her under. You were my brother. You still are. But the darkness loomed closer, wrapping around him like tendrils, absorbing him, pulling him away. You have to break free, he shouted, his voice laced with panic. There's no hope here for either of us. As the shadows closed in, her heart shattered into a million pieces, and she felt the weight of despair wash over her. The specters of the woods began to whisper louder, a cacophony of memories and voices that drowned out everything else. Follow the light, Alex urged, his form flickering like a candle in the wind. But she was frozen, unable to move as she grappled with the horror of losing him again. The shadows clutched at her, wrapping around her limbs, and suddenly she was not in the clearing, but back in the depths of her childhood nightmares. Lost in a labyrinth of darkness where the walls whispered secrets of the hollow, luring her deeper into despair. Please. His voice echoed in the dark, desperate and pained. But she felt herself slipping, the darkness encasing her. And just when she thought all was lost, a light pierced through, a brilliant, blinding light that cut through the shadows like a knife. In that moment, she wasn't just a girl who lost her twin. She was a fighter against the darkness. Alex, I'm coming, she cried, forcing her way toward the light, even as the shadows clawed at her throat, trying to pull her back into the void where they feasted on her anguish. With a final push, she broke free, tumbling into the light. The shadows screamed in fury, a cacophony of haunting echoes behind her, but she didn't look back. She couldn't. The brilliance enveloped her, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. And for the first time in years, she felt the weight of grief lift. As reality set in, Emily found herself standing on the path again, back at the edge of Ashwood Hollow. The air was crisp and filled with a kind of clarity that hadn't existed before. And though Alex was gone, she felt an undeniable sense of peace washing over her. I'll remember you, she whispered, leaning against a tree, breathing in the cool night air. And I won't let your memory fade. In those woods, where darkness once reigned, the shadows had been vanquished, at least for a moment. But she knew the truth. They would always linger, waiting, whispering, and watching. Ashwood Hollow wouldn't forget, and neither would she. As she turned to leave, the forest sighed softly, a gentle farewell from the place that had held her fear captive. She walked away, leaving behind the pain, ready to embrace whatever awaited her in the light. Before we continue this chilling tale, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the like button if you enjoyed this story. Your support helps us bring more terrifying tales to life. Stay tuned for more spine-tingling adventures. The morning light poured through the canopy of the woods, dappling the forest floor with gold and green. Emily blinked against the brightness, the remnants of the night's terror fading like mist. She had emerged from the depths of Ashwood Hollow, not unscathed, but with a glimmer of hope ignited within her. With every step away from the hollow, she felt lighter. Yet the burden of her unresolved grief still hung over her like an ever-present cloud. As she walked back toward her childhood home, the familiar sights stirred bittersweet memories. Each fallen leaf crunched beneath her feet, invoking images of a once carefree summer. She could see Alex running ahead, daring her to keep up, laughter ringing through the air. But those echoes were now replaced by an unsettling silence, a constant reminder of the absence that gnawed at her being. Entering the small house they had grown up in, she was immediately enveloped by nostalgia. It smelled of old wood and fading memories, the walls adorned with photos of happier times. Yet, a sense of melancholy permeated every corner. She felt an urge to grab the photo albums, to sift through the images of their lives. Instead, she made her way to her room, a sanctuary since childhood, filled with the remnants of innocence. Sitting on her bed, she opened the locket again, tracing the edge with her thumb. The faces inside felt like a bittersweet invocation, and she whispered, I'll find you, Alex. I promise. But how? She had confronted the shadows of Ashwood Hollow and had felt his presence so close. Yet the circumstances of his disappearance remained veiled in mystery. The memory of his final plea echoed in her mind. There's no hope here for either of us. What did he mean by that? The thought twisted in her mind like a thorn. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily set out on a quest to piece together what had happened that night 5 years ago. She began by visiting the town library, a quaint building that held a wealth of history. The librarian, a kind woman with gentle eyes, recognized her immediately. Emily? It's been so long, she said, her voice laced with warmth and sympathy. I remember how close you and Alex were. Such a tragedy. Her words trailed off, leaving an uncomfortable silence between them. Can you help me find anything about what happened to him? Emily asked, heart racing. I need to know what people have said, what was reported. I can help you with that, the librarian replied, leading Emily to a section filled with newspaper archives and local reports. As Emily scoured through stacks of yellowed papers, the sense of urgency flooded back. Each article detailed the immediate aftermath of Alex's disappearance, the searches conducted, the community's sorrow. But buried within those reports was a recurring mention of strange occurrences in the woods. Unexplained sounds, odd sightings, properties of the land that couldn't be explained by logic or science. One article in particular caught her eye, a local legend about the Hollow. It spoke of a curse that had been cast long ago, a dark entity that fed on sorrow and loss, drawing people into the woods never to return. Could this be what it claimed Alex? The more she read, the thicker the atmosphere of superstition grew. Whispers of past residents who had entered the woods and vanished without a trace weaved through the tales, but the mention of a figure called the Wraith of Ashwood, a spirit that guarded the hollow, resonated deeply within her. Whoever or whatever it was, it could hold the key to understanding Alex's disappearance. That night, swallowed by sleeplessness, Emily made a decision. She wouldn't flee from the shadows. She would confront them again. Standing before a mirror, she steadied her breath. I'm not scared of you anymore, she told her reflection, determination flooding her veins. You won't take anyone else from me. The next evening, equipped with the knowledge she had gathered, she ventured back into Ashwood Hollow. The woods pulsed with life as she stepped onto the familiar path, but there was an undercurrent of tension in the air, as though the trees held their breath in anticipation. She could almost hear the echoes of lost laughter and whispered secrets swirling around her, beckoning her deeper. As she approached the clearing where she had encountered Alex, a sense of resolve welled up inside her. The great oak loomed before her, its twisted branches sprawling like the hands of a giant. This time, she would not hesitate. She would face the truth, whatever it was. Alex, she called out, her voice steady and clear. I know you're here. I came back for you. Silence enveloped her, and for a moment, she almost felt foolish, yelling into the void. But then, a shimmer caught her eye at the edge of the clearing, a movement that made her heart race. Smoke-like shadows began to swirl, coalescing into the figure of a man, gnarled and ancient. It resembled something from a nightmare, shrouded in mist. Who dares to tread upon the sacred ground? Intoned the figure, voice drowning in an echo that reverberated through the trees. I'm here to find my brother, she shouted back, defiance mingling with fear. You took him. I won't let you take anyone else. The wraith's figure pulsated with a dark energy, the air thickening with unnatural dread. The sorrow of this place is a feast for the lost. They are drawn to it as moths are to flame. You seek him, yet you don't understand it is not I who took him. He chose the shadows. Alex would never choose to leave me, she insisted, stepping forward, fighting against the fear that threatened to pull her back. The wraith's visage flickered, revealing a hint of sorrow in its form. Would he not? It challenged, the sound like rustling leaves. The shadows whispered to those who carry despair deep within. They lure them, offering solace for pain. He was lost long before you arrived. Then what should I do? She cried, tears threatening to spill. How do I bring him back? Memories hold power. It rumbled, its voice a soft echo now, melding with the wind. The bond you share is a thread in the fabric of time. To reach him, you must harness the light of those memories, bypass the darkness that seeks to keep him buried. A surge of understanding flooded through Emily. She took a deep breath, centering herself, and closed her eyes. Memories of Alex, their laughter, their adventures, the promise of their future, washed over her like waves. With every cherished moment, she felt the warmth grow within her, illuminating the shadows that lurked in the corners of her heart. I will not forget, she whispered, feeling the weight of grief shift to resolve. I will carry him with me always. As she opened her eyes, the clearing brightened, the shadows receding momentarily. Focus, child of light. The wraith encouraged, its form fading into the mist. But beware, for the shadows will fight to keep what they have claimed. Determined, she planted her feet firmly on the ground, drawing strength from the very essence of her memories. Alex, if you can hear me, I'm coming, she shouted, her voice ringing with purpose, resonating with the frequencies of her heart. The atmosphere around her shimmered, a beacon reaching out into the darkness. Suddenly, the shadows stirred, angry tendrils darting toward her, attempting to snuff out the light she had summoned. But Emily stood her ground, her heart racing as she channeled every ounce of love and longing she felt for her brother. "Your darkness can't hold him captive," she declared, lifting her arms wide, allowing the light to pour from her. In that moment, the air crackled with energy and the shadows recoiled, hissing as if scalded. They twisted and swirled, forming an impenetrable wall of darkness. But she pushed forward, light erupting from her as radiant beams broke through the shroud. "Alex," she cried, her voice unwavering. "I believe in you. Come back to me." Just then, she felt a rush, an echoing laughter she recognized, sweet and familiar. The laughter spun around her, filling her with warmth, enveloping her in a cocoon of love. A form flickered to life amidst the chaos, breaking through the shadows. Alex appeared before her, ethereal and radiant, as if drawn from the deepest corners of her heart. "Emily," he said, his voice a sweet song of relief and longing. "Alex," she gasped, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I couldn't bear to lose you again." A tender smile graced his lips. "You never did lose me. I've always been right here, bound by the love we shared." "I fought for you," she confessed, strength returning with every moment. "Please, let's leave this place together." The shadows hissed angrily, swirling around them, desperate to reclaim what they believed belonged to them. But Emily didn't falter. She turned her gaze towards the approaching darkness, determination igniting within her. "Your hold is broken," she shouted defiantly, her heart pulsing with the power of their bond. "We choose light." With a surge, she held out her hand towards him, connecting their spirits once more. Together, they formed an unbreakable bridge, a radiant beam that fought against the shadows with fierce resolve. Light burst forth, illuminating the clearing and piercing through the very essence of the darkness, shattering the chokehold of despair that as the shadows dissipated. Emily felt the chains binding Alex begin to crumble. He stepped closer, his aura brightening with her strength. And in that moment, the darkness recoiled, shrieking in pain as light engulfed it, vanquishing whatever hold it had over them. With a final roar, the wraith emerged, flailing as the beams of light sliced through it, dissipating its form into the mist, releasing the grip of the shadows over Ashwood Hollow. "Come on," Emily urged, pulling Alex towards the edge of the clearing, the forest brightening as they moved. The moment they crossed the threshold, the woods exhaled, a sighing relief echoing through the trees. The shadows were gone, replaced by a warm glow that felt like embrace. Yes, they stepped into the warm light of dawn. The brilliance of the world around them became clearer than ever before. The sun shone brilliantly overhead, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. "Emily," Alex breathed, his hands still clasped in hers, warmth radiating between them. "I thought I'd lost you too." "You can't be gone again," she replied, emotional relief flooding through her. "We're together now. That's all that matters." In that moment, they stood together, two halves of a whole, united against the remnants of despair. The memories of Ashwood Hollow would always linger, but the darkness no longer had power over them. "Where do we go from here?" Alex asked, his expression shifting from apprehension to hope as he looked at their future stretching before them. "Wherever we want," Emily replied, her heart swelling with possibility. Together, with the shadows cast behind them, they walked forward into the light, ready to face whatever came next. Days turned into weeks as the seasons changed and the healing began. The experiences in Ashwood Hollow had forever altered them, but instead of letting fear consume her, Emily embraced the memories of her brother, allowing the warmth of their bond to guide her. She became an advocate for mental health awareness in their small town, channeling her grief into something profound and impactful, a way to help others who wrestled with feelings of despair and loss. Each moment spent creating a support group was a piece of Alex brought back to life, a way to honor his memory while helping others find their way out of the darkness. And while the woods still held their secrets, Emily learned that the past need not haunt her. She began to visit the Hollow again, not as a place of despair, but as a sanctuary where the good memories strengthened her resolve. One sunny afternoon, she gathered friends in the clearing, laughter echoing as they shared stories of loved ones lost and cherished memories. The air hummed with life, and for the first time, the trees felt open, embracing rather than ensnaring. Amid laughter and healing, the legacy of Ashwood Hollow changed. Instead of fostering fear and despair, It became a testament to love's resilience, a place where memories shone brightly, illuminating the darkest corners. And yet, in the quiet moments when dusk fell and the sun dipped beneath the horizon, Emily often found herself alone with her thoughts. The connection she felt to Alex lingered, the bond of siblings stretching across the boundaries of life and death. One evening, while sitting beneath the ancient oak, the memories surged. "I miss you," she whispered softly, letting the breeze collect her words and carry them away. The leaves rustled, almost as if in acknowledgement, urging her to remember not just the sorrow, but the joy he brought. Suddenly, she felt a familiar warmth beside her, as if he were there, laughing at her as they used to. "Remember, Em." His laughter chimed through her mind, and she felt a lightness wrap around her. "It's not goodbye. It's only until next time." Then, brushing away a tear, Emily allowed the remnants of grief to wash away. She smiled, letting the light of memories guide her, the bond that transcended time and space. And with each day, the shadow of Ashwood Hollow grew lighter. As she rose to leave, the sun dipped below the tree line, casting a golden glow across the path ahead. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the soft earth beneath her feet and the promise of a new day ahead. With a heart filled with hope, she began to walk forward, ready to embrace the unknown, hand in hand with the memories of her brother, a lighthouse in the vast sea of life. And as she ventured onward, the woods whispered their own blessings, the shadows dancing joyfully, no longer wielding power, but celebrating the unbreakable bond of love and remembrance, the light that will forever shine bright against the dark. Before we end this chilling tale, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the like button if you enjoyed this story. Your support helps us bring more terrifying tales to life. Stay tuned for more spine-tingling adventures. Whispers in the dark. Martha Collins stood at the end of the cracked driveway, her heart a mix of dread and nostalgia as she faced the once familiar, now decaying structure of her childhood home. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced wickedly across the yard, whispering secrets she'd long buried. For years, she had evaded the memories that this place held, the echoes of laughter now replaced by the dull thud of grief. "Mama, is this our new house?" Ethan's voice pulled her from her thoughts. The little boy, with his tousled brown hair and big, innocent eyes, seemed unaffected by the oppressive aura of the home. "Yes, sweetie, our new house." Martha forced a smile, but her gut twisted. This was not merely a home. It was a mausoleum of her mother's life, filled with the sense of past meals and wrapped in silences that felt almost deafening. Welcome to Storietional. Get ready to immerse yourself in a world of captivating stories filled with mystery, emotion, and adventure. Each tale is designed to ignite your imagination and keep you engaged from start to finish. As Ethan bounded up the steps, his small feet echoing against the wood, Martha stayed behind, clutching a box of his toys in one hand and her phone in the other, ready to call for help if needed. The house wasn't welcoming, and a chill ran down her spine, but she shook it off. They needed a new beginning. They had to make this place livable again. She followed Ethan inside and immediately felt the weight of the old house pressing down on her. The air was thick with dust and memories, a potent mix that stung her eyes and made her throat tighten. She set the box down and watched as Ethan ventured further into the dimly lit hallway, his voice barely above a whisper as he spoke to himself, enamored by the peeling wallpaper and the creaks of the floorboards. "Mama, look at this room," he called, excitement breaking the heavy silence. She followed him into what had once been her mother's sunroom, where light used to pour in through the wide windows. Now, the glass was clouded with grime, and the once vibrant flowers depicted in the wallpaper seemed to wither away. "Mama, can we fix this?" he asked, pulling at her sleeve. "Yes, we will," Martha promised, but the truth suffocated her. Could a new coat of paint really cleanse the walls of the memories of loss and despair? She approached the window and peered outside. The garden was overgrown and wild, much like her emotions. She took a deep breath and turned to Ethan. "Let's find some cleaning supplies." As she began to gather her thoughts and prepare for the daunting task, a faint sound echoed behind her, like a whisper caught in the wind. She turned sharply, her heart racing, But the room was empty, save for Ethan, absorbed in the remnants of a forgotten life. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Hear what, Mama?" Ethan looked up, his big eyes wide with curiosity, completely unfazed. "Nothing. Just the house settling," she said, shaking her head. Unwilling to admit her unease, as they began to clean, the shadows seemed to lengthen and waver in the corners of the room, a dark reminder of the past that lurked just beyond the thresholds, waiting to be awakened. That first night in the old house was fraught with tension. Martha had set up Ethan's room quickly, hoping to give him a sense of normalcy amid the chaos. She turned on the small bedside lamp, throwing comforting light around the room. As she tucked Ethan into bed, she kissed his forehead and sighed deeply, feeling the weight of the day settle in her bones. "Good night, Mama," Ethan mumbled, curling up under the covers. "Good night, sweetheart," she whispered back, switching off the light and closing his door just a crack. Martha made her way to her own room, a space that felt foreign. She stood by the window, overlooking the neglected yard, moonlight casting eerie patterns across the ground. She had expected nightmares, visions of Clara and the old life, but what she got instead was unsettling silence, a quiet that screamed for something sinister. As she prepared for bed, settling into the creaking mattress, she felt an odd sense of being watched. Martha brushed it off as remnants of anxiety from the move. Her eyes fluttered closed, battling sleep's embrace that I in the dead of night. A soft whisper floated through the room, barely audible. "Martha!" She jolted awake, heart racing, and glanced around in the dim light. Only the shadows answered her, and she shook her head, convinced it was a figment of her imagination. Another whisper snaked through the air, this time clearer, resonating with a haunting sadness. "Martha, come to me." The voice was unmistakable, raising the hairs on her arms. It was her mother's voice. She bolted upright, her mind racing back to Clara. Her laughter, her warmth, the moments they had shared before the illness came and stole her away. Tears pricked at her eyes, and she clenched her fists in the bedspread. "Mom," she whispered, barely able to keep her voice steady. The room was quiet again, the calm after a storm that threatened to return. Martha glanced at the clock, 2:30 a.m. She needed to calm down, convince herself that it was only the house settling or her own mind playing tricks. But as she lay back down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in their new home, that the house, with its secrets and scars, was aware of their presence. The next morning dawned with a sense of foreboding that seeped into Martha's bones. Ethan was already up, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by his toys, blissfully unaware of the upheaval swirling around them. "Good morning, Mama," he beamed, his face lighting up like the morning sun. "Good morning, sweetheart," she replied, forcing a smile while her head felt heavy with unresolved questions. After breakfast, she decided it was time to excavate the attic to find items that could help familiarize Ethan with their new life. The attic was a time capsule of Clara's life, filled with dusty boxes and forgotten treasures. As Martha climbed the rickety stairs, sadness enveloped her. "Stay close, Ethan," she warned, wading through the dim space where sunlight broke through a small, dirty window. Ethan nodded, too eager to explore the relics of the past. His small feet scampered across the wooden floor, and his giggles were the only light in the murky shadows. Martha reached for a box labeled Martha's Childhood, and as she pried it open, a cloud of dust erupted into the air, forcing her to cough. Inside were trinkets from her youth, old toys, school projects, but beneath that there was something else. An old leather-bound journal, brittle and worn, caught her eye. She opened it carefully, the pages fragile, yet filled with her mother's elegant script. "Dear Martha," it began, "this life is woven with secrets." Martha's heart quickened as she read. The entry spoke of family secrets long kept hidden, of voices that emerged in the shadows. "They speak to me, the ones who came before, urging us to remember." "Mama, what's that?" Ethan interrupted, peeking over her shoulder. "It's just an old journal," she replied, trying to sound dismissive, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. She could sense disquieting energy radiating from the words on the pages. As she continued reading, a chill crept up her spine, a collection of experiences that mirrored her current encounters. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the attic, making them both jump. Martha dropped the journal, and it tumbled open, pages ruffling as though a draft had whipped through. She turned to Ethan, eyes wide. "Stay close to me." "Mama, what was that?" he whispered, clutching her arm tightly. "I don't know, buddy." "Let's check it out together," she reassured. But her heart was pounding as they approached the noise. Martha felt a presence lingering, a whisper of the past intertwining with their reality. In the corner, a large trunk lay overturned. She carefully approached it, her stomach nodding. The energy was thicker here. Ethan knelt beside her and pointed. "Look." They opened the trunk together, revealing dusty artifacts of the past. Old clothes, faded photographs, and a large, dusty doll that seemed eerily familiar. As Martha brushed the dust off, she was struck by a sense of recognition. The doll had belonged to her. But then, from behind them, a cold wind raced through the attic, sending papers fluttering from the desk, and the journal spilled open. The pages flipped violently, and without warning, a whisper emerged again, louder this time. "Martha, remember." Martha froze, goosebumps lining her arms. This was too much. Her mother's journal, the doll, and now the whisper. She needed to understand what her mother had concealed and why it clung so tightly to the walls of this house. "Ethan," she murmured, trembling, "we should leave here for a moment. I need to regroup." With the remnants of her childhood still swirling in the air, they stepped back into the light of the hallway, unaware they had only scratched the surface of the truths waiting to be unearthed. The following days blurred together, interspersed with moments of normalcy and growing unease. Martha attempted to redecorate, but the oppressive atmosphere lingered, manifesting in strange occurrences around the house. Objects misplacing themselves, cold spots in certain rooms, and the whispers that seemed to grow louder each night. Ethan appeared more attuned to the house's energy than Martha, often talking to shadows in the corners or pointing to unknown figures, laughing and playing as though old friends joined him. Martha felt her composure slipping as the house felt less like home and more like a prison point one night. As Martha lay awake, tossing and turning, a loud bang echoed from the hallway. She sat up, heart racing. "Ethan," she called, fear gripping her voice. Silence answered, heavy and thick. The whispers returned, curling around her thoughts, beckoning her into a realm she longed to avoid. "Martha, come to me," they were insistent. The night felt alive with anticipation. Just as she gathered the courage to leave her bed, she heard the soft patter of footsteps approaching. "Ethan," she whispered again, but received no response. Martha slipped from the bed and cautiously opened her bedroom door, peering into the darkened hallway. The shadows seemed to pulse with life, thick and ominous. And as she made her way toward Ethan's room, the whispers intensified. Suddenly, Ethan's door creaked open, and she blinked in surprise when she saw him standing there, eyes wide, staring at something beyond her. "Mama," he said quietly. "Come see." "See what?" she demanded, stepping toward him, panic gripping her heart. His little finger pointed toward the end of the hallway, where flickering light danced against the walls. Just as Martha approached, the light extinguished, leaving only darkness and the weight of the house pressing down on her. The whispers converged into a cacophony, ringing in her ears. "Mama!" Ethan cried, gripping her tightly. I saw her." "Who, sweetheart? Who did you see?" Martha was on high alert, her maternal instincts flaring. "The lady, she had the doll." Ethan's eyes brimmed with tears, a mixture of fear and frustration. "She said to come play." "What lady?" Martha felt a surreal tension enveloping them, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. "The one in the attic," Ethan said, voice small. "She wanted to be my friend." Martha's chest tightened as pieces began to fall together. The whispers, the doll, and now the mention of a lady who seemed to haunt their new home. "Ethan, we need to get out of here right now," she said, searching for clarity in the chaos. "But I don't want to leave," he protested, face alight with confusion and determination. "She was nice, Mama. She talked to me. Mama." Ethan's voice rang out, breaking her thoughts. "Can we go back to the attic? I want to see the lady again." "No, Ethan, I mean it." Martha snapped, feeling the growing desperation creep in. Memories of her mother's stories flooded her mind, tales woven with dread about their family's past. That night, Martha could barely close her eyes, her mind racing with fear and racing thoughts. The whispers turned into a haunting melody, entwining themselves around her consciousness, slithering into her dreams. Desperate to silence the intrusion, she clutched Ethan, who slept peacefully without a hint of darkness encroaching his dreams. At dawn, she stormed to the attic, gripping the journal tightly. She had to confront the legacy that suffocated her. As she climbed the stairs, the wooden steps creaked ominously beneath her weight, a warning of what lay ahead. With determined breaths, she opened the trunk again and rummaged through it, desperate for answers. "What are you hiding?" she whispered to herself. She felt an angry shiver pass through the air, a warning to turn back. But she pressed on. Fingers trembling, she opened the journal again and flipped through the pages. Her mother's words seemed to resonate in the air, and as she read, she found the passages that spoke of her mother's friends, spirits from their ancestral lineage who lingered in the shadows, searching for resolution. Clara had been haunted, hiding the truth of their family's curse and the connections that bound them to the house. And then she found it, a warning. Beware the shadows that whisper promises. They deceive the innocent. We are tethered to this house through our sins, gripping tightly to our unresolved pasts. The voice of her mother echoed in her thoughts, urging her to understand what had been concealed. There were those who lingered due to unacknowledged secrets and hidden truths. Some had sought revenge, others redemption, but all were searching for something, closure. Thanks for staying with me on this journey. I hope you're enjoying the story so far. If you haven't already, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Storietional. Your support helps bring more of these stories to life and keeps our storytelling adventure alive. Now, let's continue with the rest of the story. I promise there's more excitement waiting ahead. Mama! Ethan's voice called from the bottom of the stairwell, piercing through her revelations. "Where are you?" "I'm coming," Martha shouted, her heart dancing with nerves. She descended the stairs and found him standing there, holding the doll tightly to his chest. "I think she's sad," Ethan said, face somber as though he felt the weight of the doll's history, that a warmth enveloped Martha's heart, but it mingled with fear. "What do you mean?" she asked, kneeling before him. "The lady showed me," he said softly, placing the doll in her hands. "She needs us to help her find peace." Martha took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. Ethan's innocence radiated hope, but she knew the risk they were taking. "Fine," she said, moving up the attic stairs again with renewed purpose. "But we do it together." With Ethan beside her, they filled the attic with unwavering hope, seeking the spirit's presence. As they chanted incantations from the journal, the atmosphere shifted. It thickened and stirred with energy. The whispers grew into a violent wind, swirling around them as they felt a presence rapaciously advance. "Who disturbs my rest?" a voice thundered, a mixture of sorrow and wrath. The shadows swirled chaotically, manifesting into a figure, a pale woman whose face mirrored Clara's, yet her eyes were void and cold. "I'm here to help you," Martha shouted, trembling but nonetheless resolute. The figure flickered, a manifestation of despair. "Help? You seek to release me? You do not know what binds me here." "I do," Martha cried, clenching the doll tighter. "You are part of my family. We want to help you, but I need you to trust me. I know about the pain, the secrets." As realization pressed down upon Martha, the whispers transformed into screams, echoing through the walls. Shadows surged, a whirlwind of energy threatening to tear at their very existence. But at that moment, she understood. She had to confront the truth lying beneath the surface. "Mama!" Ethan called, tears streaming down his face. "Listen!" Martha screamed, facing the malevolent force. "This cycle ends with us. We refuse to carry your pain anymore." The woman's face slackened, revealing an expression of anguish. "You think you can change this? This house was built upon grief. We are forever entwined." Ethan stepped forward, clutching Martha's leg. We'll change it. I can be your friend." In that precious moment, a flicker of hope ignited within the figure. Friendship binds souls, dear child. But remember, to forget is not an option. You must forgive the past. Martha closed her eyes, hearing her mother's voice intermingled with Ethan's. They were stronger together, and she couldn't let fear dictate her life. "We forgive you," she shouted, "for all your pain, for all that binds us to this old house. We will break the chains of grief." As the words escaped her lips, light pierced through the shadowy barriers, igniting separation between them. The storm twisted and spiraled, the whispers transforming into harmonious cries, a thank you that echoed through the quieted space. The figure began to dissipate like a mist, and a gentle warmth spread across the room. "Martha," the voice whispered, softer now, filled with love and understanding. For the first time, the shadows began to settle, releasing their hold as echoes of mere memories floated away on the breeze. And as the figure faded, the doll dropped from Martha's hands, landing softly in Ethan's waiting grasp. "Did we do it, Mama?" he asked, eyes shining bright. "Yes, my love. We did it," Martha breathed, enveloping him in her arms. They turned together, feeling the weight of the house lessen just slightly as they stepped into the light. The new beginning they both longed for. Martha and Ethan stood in the attic, the last vestiges of shadow swirling around them before dissipating into the morning light. The air felt lighter, almost cleansing, as though the house itself was exhaling a breath it had held for lifetimes. They looked at each other, the bond between them deepened by the confrontation they had just faced. The days that followed were transformative. Martha began to see her childhood home in a new light. The peeling wallpaper seemed less like a reminder of decay and more like a canvas of history. With each stroke of paint and every piece of furniture they rearranged, she began to weave new memories into the fabric of the house, a place that would hold laughter instead of sorrow. Ethan thrived amidst the renewed energy. He played in the sunlight-filled rooms, laughter echoing off the walls as he filled the spaces with his youthful exuberance. The whispers that had once wormed their way into his nights transformed into soft, reassuring sounds, like the house was thanking them for their bravery, for acknowledging the past and moving forward. Though Clara's spirit had found peace, Martha felt her presence always near, encouraging her, guiding her through the complexities of motherhood and healing. One quiet evening, while tucking Ethan into bed, he whispered, "I miss the lady sometimes, Mama, but I don't think she's sad anymore. Thanks for staying with me on this journey." I hope you're enjoying the story so far. If you haven't already, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Storietional. Your support helps bring more of these stories to life and keeps our storytelling adventure alive. Now, let's continue with the rest of the story. I promise, there's more excitement waiting ahead. With a tender smile, Martha replied, "She'll always be a part of us, sweetheart. We helped her find rest, and now she watches over us." Over time, they became part of the community once more, reaching out to neighbors and making friends. Martha found solace in the new relationships she built, her heart slowly mending with each shared moment and each connection made. The garden, once wild and forsaken, transformed under her nurturing hand. It bloomed into a vibrant sanctuary of color and life. Yet, the house still held its secrets. Whispers of its past lingered like ghosts of forgotten tales. And Martha began to document her journey in a new journal, pouring her thoughts and feelings onto the pages. The soft, candlelit glow of the attic became her sanctuary for reflection, where memories wove together, illuminating joys and sorrows alike. It was a tribute to both her mother and her own resilience. But there were still fragments of the family's history waiting to be uncovered. One late autumn afternoon, while organizing old photographs, Martha discovered an envelope tucked away inside a dusty box. It was filled with letters, stories of her ancestors, tales of struggles and triumphs, all retold in her mother's familiar handwriting. Each letter felt like a piece of a puzzle, and as she read, a sense of purpose kindled within her. "I want to share this," she thought. The stories didn't belong solely to her. They were meant to be passed on, a legacy of love and courage. With renewed vigor, Martha began to breathe life into these narratives, envisioning gatherings where neighbors would share their own stories, fostering a sense of community and belonging that as the seasons changed, the whispers of the house transformed from eerie echoes to a comforting lullaby, a reminder of where they had come from and how far they had traveled. Martha and Ethan found joy not just in each other, but in the very walls that had once held them captive. Their home became a place of unity, steeped in love, memory, and the echoes of the past that had finally come to Rest Point one night. As they prepared to sleep, the wind howled gently outside, rustling the leaves like laughter. As Martha closed her eyes, she felt Clara's presence just as she often did, a soft warmth enveloping her, a lingering kiss upon her cheek. She knew her mother was at peace, proud of the legacy they had built, and hopeful for the future. "Mama," Ethan's voice broke through the stillness. "Yes, sweetheart," she replied, her heart full. "Do you think we can make the garden bloom again next spring?" Martha smiled, a glimmer of hope sparkling in her eyes. "Absolutely, my love. We will watch it flourish, just like us." And as the moon bathed their room in soft light, Martha drifted into sleep, embracing the warmth of the past while welcoming the promise of tomorrows yet to come. Thus, the mortifying echoes of their home transformed into a nurturing environment, one where history and healing intertwined, creating a new beginning born from resilience and love. Thank you for listening to this story on Storietional. I hope it left you inspired, entertained, or simply lost in a world of imagination. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories. Stay tuned for our next adventure. Until then, take care and keep the love for stories alive. The dim glow of streetlights barely penetrated the fog that clung to the pavement like an uninvited guest. Crestwood Lane was a place on the outskirts of town that few dared to tread after sundown. The once bustling thoroughfare, lined with charming Victorian homes and maple trees, had fallen into disrepair, and a sense of dread saturated the air. Whispers of disappearances, strange happenings, and a serial killer that haunted its shadowy alleys had made the street a ghost story in its own right. Welcome to Storietional. Get ready to immerse yourself in a world of captivating stories filled with mystery, emotion, and adventure. Each tale is designed to ignite your imagination and keep you engaged from start to finish. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be part of our storytelling journey. Let's dive into today's story and explore its fascinating world together. Elena hadn't heard the stories, at least not the full, unembellished ones. New to the area, she was excited about the quaint neighborhood and the possibilities that awaited her in her first home. The realtor had spoken of its picturesque charm, the cozy cafes on every corner, and the vibrant community life. What the realtor hadn't mentioned was Crestwood Lane, where the thrill of living in a quaint neighborhood was dimmed by a pervasive fear that on her first night, Elena stood by her window, watching the oversized moon hover low in the sky. Its light caressed the rooftops, illuminating the silvery mist that swirled around the street. The sounds of the night reached her ears, the mournful cry of an owl, the rustle of leaves, and the distant echo of her heartbeat. Her excitement soon turned to apprehension as she remembered the warning of her neighbor, an elderly woman with worry lines etched deep into her face as if carved by unseen hands. "You keep your doors locked tight, dear, and don't go out at night. Just stay inside when the sun goes down." The woman's voice had been trembling, fueled by stories of the past. A missing girl, a police investigation that faded into cold case files, ominous shadows lurking just beyond the light. Elena chuckled at the time, thinking it was just the ramblings of an old woman, but now she couldn't shake a growing unease. The following day, Elena set out to explore the area, hoping to dispel the cobweb of fear in her mind. She walked past decaying houses, their windows dark like sunken eyes, and one by one, she noticed how the beauty of the houses had faded. how the paint chipped and the once vibrant gardens lay in wilting disarray. A sense of isolation seeped in as the sun dipped lower in the sky to be wide dusk. She found herself back in her living room, emotions swirling within her as she tried to shake the remnants of the eerie sensations from earlier. The glow of her laptop screen was a comfort as she searched for local events, anything to connect with her new community. But as she scrolled, an unsettling article caught her eye, a thread tying the recent crime wave to a figure lurking near Crestwood Lane. If you've enjoyed the story so far, make sure to subscribe to Storietional and stay with us until the end. Trust me, the best part is yet to come, and you won't want to miss it. Your support means the world and helps us keep bringing these stories to life. Reports have begun surfacing about a man stalking the area. Neighbors claimed they had seen a shadowy figure near the old park, where children used to play, laughing, running, and carefree. Those same children had gradually stopped visiting, their parents whispering warnings and draping barriers around their innocence. They called him the Shadow, a term that sent chills down Elena's spine. Keen to ignore the gnawing anxiety within her, she made dinner, each sound in the house echoing louder than necessary. The creaking of the floorboards, the whistle of the kettle multiplied in her mind until every flicker of the light bulb seemed magnified. After dinner, she curled up on the couch, seeking refuge in a novel, where the fictional world could shield her from her own. That evening, a loud knock on the door ripped her from the pages of her book. Her heart pounded as she hesitated, unsure of who could be visiting at such an hour. Mustering the courage, she approached the door, peering through the peephole. At first, she couldn't see anyone, just the streetlight casting elongated shadows across the porch. But as a figure stepped into the light, her breath caught that it was a man, tall and somewhat disheveled, his eyes dark pools of unreadable emotion. He looked rough, as if he had stepped out of a storm. Elena took a step back, mind racing with caution. Perhaps he was the very shadow she had been warned about. The man rapped on the door again, this time louder, desperation lacing his voice. "Please, I need help. My car broke down." His plea echoed in the stillness, each word wrapped in urgency. Her instinct screamed to call the police, to retreat and bar the door shut. But something about his tone compelled her. A flicker of human concern flicked to life inside her. With trembling hands, she unlocked the door, peering out cautiously. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice lilting with uncertainty. "I'm fine, I promise. Just, please, I need to use your phone," he said, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. Elena's gaze searched the darkness behind him, but discovered nothing but the empty street. Please, it'll only take a moment." His pleading tone cracked a barrier around her conscience. She stepped aside, allowing him entry. Once inside, the air shifted with tension, suffocating under the weight of what she had just done. As he fumbled with her phone, she warily watched, unsure whether she had made a grave mistake. He dialed a number, voice trembling, and Elena could only catch bits and pieces of the conversation, something about being stranded and needing a ride. Eventually, he hung up, offering a strained smile. "Thank you for this. I promise I'll be out of your hair shortly." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, and she noticed it was damp, as if he had been running through the rain, or perhaps something more sinister. Elena nodded, trying to smile back, but her heart raced with a sense of foreboding. The man shifted uneasily, casting glances toward the window, as if expecting an unwelcome visitor. She broke the suffocating silence, eager for the sound of her own voice. "So, you're not from around here?" He shook his head, eyes darting to the streets again. "Visiting friends. I didn't realize this area was so quiet." "Or dangerous?" she ventured, try to test the waters. "Dangerous?" He laughed softly, but it was a humor devoid of warmth. "It's just a street. Places like this can feel ominous if you've heard enough stories. Just urban legends, you know?" Elena nodded slowly, her pulse thrumming. Yeah, I suppose so. The conversation faltered, and the silence grew thick again, suffocating both of them. Each glance toward the window deepened her sense of dread. It seemed odd that he hadn't received a ride when he had reached out for help. She didn't know how long it would be until someone arrived, and the minutes stretched on uncomfortably. After a few more strained minutes, the man turned to her, his expression serious. Listen, if you feel anxious, I understand. Just lock your doors. It's best to be safe. A lot of people have gone missing around here. If you've enjoyed the story so far, make sure to subscribe to Storietional and stay with us until the end. Trust me, the best part is yet to come, and you won't want to miss it. Your support means the world and helps us keep bringing these stories to life. Elena's stomach dropped as if he had declared his intentions in the open. You know about that? He nodded, eyes steely now. Everyone is on edge. This place has a way of swallowing people whole. It's not just shadows you have to worry about. Suddenly, the air was heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. An uneasy feeling coiled tightly around her heart, leaving her breathless. Why did you come here then? Just to see friends, he replied too quickly. Her instincts flared with suspicion. Before she could respond, the phone rang, shocking them both. It was the man's ride, but the moment slipped from her grasp. I should probably answer that. It might be important. She offered the phone, but he hesitated. Let me call them back. I left my number. Each second stretched as Elena watched him dial through anxious eyes, wrapping her fingers around the arms of the chair, afraid of invoking an unseen doom with her next move. She should have called the police, should have turned him away, but there was something deeply human about his plea. The vulnerability hid something darker just beneath the surface, and the air in the room thickened with the scent of threat. Just then, a crash erupted outside, splitting the night like a twisted knife. Her instincts screamed at her to stay inside, but curiosity pulled her to the window. She gasped, her heart pounding as she saw a figure dart down the street. A flash of blonde hair, tears streaming down her face as she stumbled in desperate flight. "Help! Help me!" the girl cried, her voice piercing through the air. Elena's heart raced as she reached for the doorknob, but the man's voice froze her in place. "Don't! It's not safe." "But she's in trouble," Elena protested, torn between the instincts to help and the growing horror in her gut. "Stay here," he demanded, eyes darting back toward the door. An unsettling shift passed over his demeanor. The girl screamed again, pleading for someone to help her, but the man reached for Elena's shoulders, his grip now uncomfortably tight. "Listen to me. You need to hold." Before he could finish, the door flung open and the girl burst inside, gasping for breath. She was panic-stricken, eyes wild as she slammed the door behind her, barricading it with her body. "Please help me. He's coming," she shouted, her voice broke, a raw scream resonating in the quiet room. The man froze, shock ripping through his body before a cruel smile crept across his face. "Oh, sweetie, you shouldn't have done that." Elena's heart plummeted as she felt her breath hitch in her throat. The juxtaposition of his normal tone to the chilling smile shattered the illusion she believed for a second. This man was no savior. He was the predator. The girl turned, eyes wide, panic saturating every word that slipped through trembling lips. "He's the shadow. I saw him. I saw what he did." Elena felt the cold reality wash over her, pressing deeper against her ribs. She took a step back, realizing the danger they were in, but the man merely chuckled, dark and mirthless. "You shouldn't have come here, sweetheart," he murmured, his voice now a low growl. "You should have just stayed in the dark like the rest." Elena was paralyzed, caught in a web of horror as the reality crashed down around her. The locked door felt like a fragile barrier against the storm of chaos roaring through the room. She grabbed the girl's hand, the warmth of life breaking through the chill flooding her veins. "Run!" Elena shouted, adrenaline igniting her every sense. But the man moved like lightning, lunging toward them, and in that waking nightmare, time seemed to ripple and stretch. Elena's instincts kicked in as she pulled the girl towards a back door, the slamming of feet and nervous breaths filling her ears. Outside lay a world full of shadows, every inch of the street fraught with danger, but they had no choice. The front door groaned under the force of the man pursing them, and the street lamp flickered, a sign of the impending cacophony that awaited. "Go!" Elena screamed as they burst out into the night. The chill of the air hit her like a slap, but she had to focus. There was no time. The girl's hand was still gripped tightly in hers as they raced toward the nearby park, their feet pounding loudly against the pavement. The trees loomed above, dark figures against the dim glow of the moonlight. A part of her feared they would simply vanish into the depths of the night, becoming another statistic lost to Crestwood Lane. "Stay close," she urged, glancing back to see if the man had followed. But the shadows encroached, and Elena sensed his presence creeping closer. He was not too far behind, fueled by malice and the thrill of the chase. She urged the girl forward, her heart racing faster than ever. "Why are you here?" The girl gasped between breaths, a tremor of fear lacing her voice. "Just keep running. We'll talk later." Elena panted, adrenaline coursing through her, sharpening her senses. Suddenly, a scream pierced the night air behind them, a haunting cry that echoed through the trees. Panic washed over her as the sound mingled with the pounding of their feet. The girl stumbled, but Elena steadied her, pushing them both onward. In the shadows, they ducked behind a bush, holding their breath as the man's footsteps drew closer. His silhouette appeared, the haunting remnants of their brief interactions surfacing in the quiet. "Where are you hiding, little birds?" he taunted, his voice dripping with sinister amusement. Elena clutched her heart, the fear spreading like venom through her veins. "We need to get out of here," she whispered to the girl, who nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Over there," the girl suddenly pointed, her gaze darting to a faint flicker in the distance, an open garage door with faint lights peeking through. If you've enjoyed the story so far, make sure to subscribe to Storietional and stay with us until the end. Trust me, the best part is yet to come, and you won't want to miss it. Your support means the world and helps us keep bringing these stories to life. Elena hesitated only for a moment before leading the girl toward it, adrenaline coursing through her veins as they raced toward the dim light. The garage belonged to a small house that hadn't seen life in years, but it felt like their only hope against the lurking menace. As they approached it, they heard the man's footsteps retreating, looking for them elsewhere. Huddled together, they exchanged desperate glances before slipping inside the garage. The door creaked ominously, and they quickly found a place behind a stack of old boxes, using the debris as a makeshift shield. The garage was silent apart from their frantic breathing and the distant sounds of the neighborhood. Outside, the shadows danced under the sodium lights, but the darkness this time was a blanket, hiding them from view. "Do you think he'll find us?" the girl asked, fear cracking her voice. "He's looking for something to fill the void. We have a chance as long as we're silent," Elena replied firmly. Despite the tremor in her own voice, she found strength in its steadiness, nurturing the flicker of hope within them both. Minutes crawled by, distorted minutes stretching into hours, and Elena could hardly discern the passing of time. They listened intently, every sound amplifying the tension in the space they shared. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the garage, making them jump. It shuffled with a haunting reverberation, a memory refusing to be forgotten. The door creaked as it edged open, revealing the man silhouetted against the light, prowling like a predatory wolf. "Now, where did you run off to?" he mused, scanning the room with predatory glee. The girl squeezed Elena's hand tightly, and in that moment, they held their breath, each inhalation magnifying the doom hanging in the air. The man's movements were casual, yet excitement hung in his eyes like a dangerous poison. "Guess you think you can outsmart me?" he taunted, circling the garage, deliberately dragging the moments into an agonizing dance. Elena suppressed a whimper as he drew nearer, peering behind boxes, then finally hesitating before unearthing a tarp. "You really should have stayed in the light, my dear," he whispered, and it dripped with malice. Even in the chilling fear that engulfed them, she felt a rush of righteous anger sustain her against the nightmare that in one harrowing moment. Just as he turned his back, Elena made a split-second decision. Grabbing a rusted wrench from a toolbox nearby, she summoned her inner strength and hurled it toward him. The noise ricocheted through the garage like a gunshot, and the man spun around, eyes wide with fury. "Fools!" he bellowed, the anger simmering on his features. Sensing his momentary lapse, Elena seized the opportunity. "Run!" she cried, yanking the girl's hand as they dashed for the exit. Together, they tore through the doorway, racing down the driveway. The night was alive with the sounds of their frantic footsteps, echoing louder than their pounding hearts. They needed to reach safety, any place filled with light or humanity where they could find shelter. "Left," the girl shouted instinctively, leading them into an alleyway adorned with overgrown weeds. They tore past jagged fences as their legs screamed under the relentless pace. Elena heard him not far behind, his cries slicing through the darkness, sharp and menacing. "You can't hide forever." He was relentless, dogged by the belief that they were merely pieces in his horrific game. A morbid chase that pressed on without limits. Sweat poured down Elena's brow as they rounded the corner, desperation blooming with each step. They needed escape, a way to escape the terrors that grasped at their heels. The sound of a car engine echoed nearby, and her heart leapt, summoning whatever strength remained. "There! That car!" Elena exclaimed, pointing toward a nearby parking lot where a vehicle sat unattended, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. "Can you drive?" the girl gasped. "My dad taught me," Elena replied, urgency flooding her voice. She pushed forward, adrenaline igniting the last remaining embers of courage. As they darted toward the car, Elena's fingertips grazed the handle, and her heart raced with hope. "Get in," she called, her voice a lifeline. The girl climbed into the passenger seat, her breath still shallow, but her resolve unyielding. Panic surged as Elena fumbled with the keys, praying they had some cosmic mercy. She slid inside, her heart thrumming like a war drum as she slipped the key into the ignition. With a roar, the engine sputtered to life, but before she could catch her breath, she caught sight of the man racing toward them, a dark figure chasing down the light. "Go! Go! Go!" the girl yelled, her voice breaking against the terror that surrounded them. Elena floored the gas pedal, and the tires screeched against the pavement as they shot forward. The world blurred around them as they tore through the night, the echo of their narrow escape rebounding in the recesses of her mind. "Keep driving," the girl urged, tears streaming down her face. "We need to get away." Elena tightened her grip on the wheel, merging onto the main road and pushing against the growing sense of dread that threatened to consume them. Her heart pounded wildly, pulsing in time with the engine, every beat a reminder of their mortality. As they raced away, the darkness slowly began to recede in the rearview mirror, but there was still lingering doubt. Had they truly escaped? The remnant of fear clutched at them, and silence pooled in the space between them until the girl finally spoke up. "Thank you for saving me. I thought I was going to die." Elena turned to her, breathless yet relieved, the weight of what they had managed to escape hanging over them both. "I couldn't just let him get you." The girl nodded, gazing out the window where the town lights flickered in the distance. "There are so many stories about him, but he's real." Elena shivered at the thought, knowing that a part of her would never forget those haunted nights on Crestwood Lane. They had fled into the night, but whispers of darkness lingered on. "Let's find a police station. They need to know what happened." As the city loomed ahead, the glow of humanity drew closer, but the bitter memory of Crestwood Lane haunted them. They had escaped the shadow, but the road ahead cracked with uncertainty. a reminder that fear often crawled just beneath the surface, waiting to rear its head again. But united against darkness, armed with light, they pressed on into the dawn, refusing to let shadows claim their narrative. And as they found their way towards safety, the memory of those treacherous streets lingered, a parable of resilience against the lurking void, a reminder that darkness had its limits, but as long as there was light, hope would always blaze a path forward. Thank you for listening to this story on Storietional. I hope it left you inspired, entertained, or simply lost in a world of imagination. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories. Stay tuned for our next adventure. Until then, take care and keep the love for stories alive.